The next day, "Stop crying. You're a grown man making a fool of yourself." List snapped, folding his arms. "The demon hunter from a Guion kingdom is here." Archer, slumped over like a sack of wet laundry, flinched at the name. His face twisted in fear, and he scrambled upright using a stone bench for support. With shaking hands, he unclasped the leather strap across his back and drew his weapon, a heavy, curved blade shaped like an oversized butcher's cleaver. It was a brutal thing, a cross between a scimitar and a slaughterhouse tool. Fitting. List had once asked where Archer had trained. Archer just laughed and said he hadn't. He'd spent his youth butchering livestock, skinning, boning, gutting. Slicing meat was his only trade. Humans weren't all that different. Back in the Guion kingdom, there was a delicacy made from monkey brains. Archer once told him that carving a man open was like slicing open a monkey, just messier. He had the muscle of a kitchen grunt and the instincts of a predator. That was enough. "Where?" Archer muttered, eyes darting. List smirked. "Nowhere. I was joking. But stay alert. Someone might die today." It wasn't an empty threat. If Archer kept drinking like he had been, he'd one day wake up with a knife in his throat. If he woke up at all. Finn urged the information peddler forward. "Move. Time costs blood in this town." The group boarded a two-bird carriage. Land birds, massive ostrich-like creatures bred for muscle, not endurance. They charged through the city like battering rams with feathers. 15 minutes later, they reached the city's edge. After slipping the gate guard's 6 copper coins, the peddler led them down a narrow alley near the walls. "They're staying just around the corner," the peddler said, voice trembling. "A warehouse used for distributing cheap liquor. Just temporary lodging, I swear it." List grabbed a handful of the man's hair and yanked him close. "If you're lying, your head's the price." "I'm not. I swear," the peddler gasped. "They're in a rented farmhouse converted into a liquor depot. Military masters, former guards of an errand noble. That's all." The peddler was half crying, half muttering regrets. From now on, he'd deal with adventurers. Less paranoia, fewer death threats. When they reached the warehouse, the tension shifted. Fun and the armored knight inside, Claude, hit it off immediately. Both were once men of nobility. Both had watched their titles crumble like dry bread. Now, they sat on broken crates, drinking stale liquor and reminiscing about gilded halls, velvet sheets, and maids who smelled like roses. List stood apart, watching 2 men trying to laugh while drowning in the muck of faded glory. The peddler hadn't lied. These military masters were real. Claude had once been a decorated knight, sworn to protect the son of an errant empire official. But the noble boy had died, some fever, sudden and brutal, and now his guardians had no idea how to explain it. "He died of illness abroad? They'll hang us for incompetence," Claude had muttered. Now exiled, they were stuck in this warehouse with little more than 5 gold coins and whatever pride they hadn't sold off yet. Claude still wore his knight master armor. List noted the craftsmanship, polished joints, gleaming steel alloy, a faint pulse of energy at the core. Expensive, probably enchanted, but the emblem on the chest had been scraped off, a silent rejection of the oath he could no longer uphold. Around him were 20 former soldiers, tired men in worn chainmail, lost and leaderless. Claude sighed. "If it were just me, I'd vanish. Go east, find a quiet grave. But what about them? They followed me. They bled for me. They can't all become farmers." List said nothing. He wasn't running a charity ship. The Thunder God pirates had no room for broken soldiers carrying imperial baggage. If it didn't take them, no one in the port would. Certainly not the other pirate captains. They'd slit their throats for the armor alone. "We're not setting sail for at least 2 weeks, List finally said. "We'll figure something out." Claude leaned forward. "We don't want rank. Just a berth. Somewhere to exist. We can wait." Fun kept silent. He respected Claude, but this wasn't a decision made from sentiment. Liz sighed and offered a sliver of hope. "I know someone heading for the Far East Islands. Could put you in contact. You'd find work. Maybe peace." Claude muttered something under his breath, something about redemption, gold, and the Emperor's amnesty. Liz shook his head. "The Empire eats its own. You're dreaming if you think a pardon will come." Claude didn't argue. Then List asked, almost offhand, the noble's son, the one you were protecting. What was he doing out here? Claude paused. His next words hit List like a thunderclap. If it was something minor, we could have handled it. He trailed off, and List's stomach dropped, because something about his tone told him it wasn't minor. Not at all. Master Aaron was sent to the duchy to negotiate the railway project. Claude explained bitterly, rubbing his temples as if that could soothe the pressure building behind his eyes. The plan was to break through the Western Wall and connect the nations, trade, logistics, all that. We'd barely arrived when the king's envoy arranged for us to stay elsewhere for the night. Said the meeting would happen the next day. But Master Aaron died before sunrise. Heart failure, they said. He fell silent, the guilt simmering just beneath the surface. Finn glanced at him, then away. Your luck's rotten. Claude gave a miserable chuckle. I was just a guard, but it happened on royal grounds. And he wasn't just anyone. His death, whether natural or not, is a disaster. There's no defending it. I can't go home. Even if they spare me, my name's already ruined. A heart attack, huh? Finn narrowed his eyes. You sure it wasn't poison? Claude flinched. The place was chaos. Too many faces. Too much movement. Too many hands touching the wine and food. And now, it doesn't matter. The man's dead. That's all anyone will remember. He said it like someone trying to convince himself. List, meanwhile, leaned against the frame of a rusted window, lighting a cigarette with deliberate calm. His gaze wasn't on Claude. It was far beyond him, looking through the smoke and the stone walls into patterns only he seemed to see. Damn it all, List muttered. The Aaron Empire's testing the waters again. Claude blinked. What do you mean? You people don't send envoys to build a railway, just for fun, List said, exhaling a long breath of smoke. Railways are for moving armies. Goods come second. You build one through the duchy's west wall, and suddenly you've got a 10-day march to London City. No more half-year retreats. No need to rely on backwater canals or sea routes packed with tolls. You link directly to the East Shore's warm ports. No middlemen, no bottlenecks, no resistance. Claude looked stunned. You're saying this was an invasion plan? List shrugged. I'm saying Aaron's no fool. Send a noble son as bait. See how Bima reacts. If the envoy dies, that's justification. A reason to mobilize. Over a single envoy? That's not enough to start a war. Archer muttered, drunk as ever, swirling his flask lazily. Claude's jaw tightened, and Finn looked ready to backhand him. War doesn't need bodies. Archer, List said. It needs leverage. If killing one noble gives the Emperor a chance to seize the rail line, expand supply routes, and set up resource points, that's more than enough. Claude swallowed hard. He hadn't thought of it like that. He believed the railway was just for connecting trade to the far East Islands. But the way List laid it out, conquest made more sense. Damn, he said finally, you people really see the whole board. Claude turned to Finn, mistaking him for the captain. Sharp crew you've got, especially with the first line barely finished. Finn gave a small shake of his head. You're looking at the captain. He pointed to List, who was now seated like a lazy king in his battered chair, smoke trailing from his lips. List waved lazily. I'm from the far east of the far East Islands. Practically a myth. Claude chuckled awkwardly and drank to save face. Finn looked like a noble in exile. List looked like a man who stole from nobles and didn't regret it. Still, Claude liked them, respected them, even. They weren't like the shady crews he'd tried dealing with at the port. Those degenerates had no loyalty and less spine. If you'll take us in, Claude said at last, we won't ask for command or share in decisions. Just a place to survive. My men don't kill innocents or honest folk. But when it comes to pirates, we could clear that entire port before your coffee cools. He said it with quiet confidence. Finn raised a brow, impressed. List looked at him, considering. Claude continued. We'll serve until the heat dies down. Earn some coin. Maybe one day we buy back our titles. List exhaled through his nose. I've got 3 rules. The third is simple. If it makes money, it makes sense. But I don't do scum. No bullying the weak. No trafficking. And no cults. I once chopped down a whole noble house at Blue Bay for for blood sacrifices. Claude straightened. He respected that. Finn glanced at List. They'd gathered enough intel for one night. If war was coming, Heavenport would be caught in the crossfire. Pirates wouldn't last long against an Imperial machine. They needed options. Fast. List lit another smoke. I don't usually hand out freebies, but if you're serious, he opened his coin pouch and drew out 10 shining gold dragons stamped with the Time Dragon crest. Here, Dream Blue Hotel. 10 days. I might need a favor. Claude hesitated. We haven't done anything yet. At least tell me what kind of favor. List flicked ash into the air. Just business. Helping settle some disputes. Claude finally nodded and took the coins. No further questions. 10 minutes later, outside. Captain, Archer said, side-eyeing him. Are you soft in the head? 10 gold dragons? You give me half that, and I'd get an ox blindfolded. List scoffed. That's why you're still broke. Sometimes it's not about the blade. It's about showing you can afford a dozen. That gets respect. That gets people moving. Still, they could take the gold and vanish. Archer grumbled. Where would they go? London City's crawling with rats, but I'm the biggest one in the sewer. He spun his flintlock pistol lazily. They'll be back. Finn walked beside him, silent, but nodding inwardly. He'd seen what List was doing. If the job came from the lore of London, they'd need a front line. Claude's men would be perfect for that. They didn't know it yet, but Claude was already part of the plan. And the war, quietly boiling in the shadows, was closer than anyone.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
20 years before the Battle of the Great Wall, Baima Duchy was still a kingdom. The undeparted King Philip V took the Prime Minister's advice and imitated the systems of Pedon Kingdom. He opened national academies in the central royal capital and the East Shore, using them to prevent the retention of talent in the jurisdictions of local nobles. This effort weakened the ruling power of all lords and absorbed fresh blood to serve the court. The Enlightenment Act was introduced, taking a substantial amount of money from the national treasury to support education. Anyone who had at least a middle-level educational background and could pass the entrance exam to an academy was eligible for this policy. Whether it was the exemption of boarding and miscellaneous fees for rural students, the substantial scholarships for outstanding students, or even the possibility for excellent students to attend school for free, aside from meals, and earn money. Those who truly had substance after graduation were also arranged for, directly entering the court and rising rapidly through the ranks. The Baima Kingdom became a paradise for academics, as more and more outstanding talents emerged. Academies blossomed all over the East Shore in a time of grand scenery, with known natural disasters and the national strength at an unprecedented peak. That was until the year 1274 of the St. Aaron calendar when the Great Wall defenses collapsed. The Allan Heavenly Army broke through. Philip V committed suicide in his isolated city, and his orthodox successor, the Sixth, was lured into a trap and met his end in a foreign country. In the following years, except for the Baima National Arcane Academy in the royal capital, all other academies were transformed by the puppet king into joint stock companies, cheaply sold off to the great nobles. Even though the strength of the teachers remained and various facilities and teaching materials were still available, the Enlightenment Act was no more. And because of the former regime's system, many people in Baima Duchy still firmly believed that education was the way out. Despite the exorbitant tuition that could drain a middle-class family, there were still many students. This also gave Mika a perfect opportunity. Earning dozens of golden dragons for just one job, Mika was definitely one of the wealthiest. Inside a luxurious suite on the 10th floor of a high-end hotel in the inner ring of London City. Opening the curtains offered a view of the infinite blue of the grand scenery by the port and the spectacular sight of nearly 1,000 ships moored, with seagulls circling and crying above the bustling streets. The room was fragrant with the scent of rose incense, the polished fine wood grain flooring shiny and immaculate, pale violet fluorite crystal chandeliers hanging above, the space incredibly spacious, and the coffee tables and chaise lounges were also made of precious wood. An interlock pattern of protective wall panels and finely detailed floral tapestry adorned the walls, and there was a small pool on the balcony. On the large bed, Mika, with his upper body naked, had finished the first round. He watched calmly as 3 female university students frolicked and played in the pool. After a while, he became lost in thought, considering other matters. These female students came from various parts of Bima Duchy. 2 of them were Bima people, while one had fuzzy beast ears and a tail on her hips. Otherwise, she looked no different from an ordinary person. This race, possessing only a few animal characteristics, was known as the Isu people. Unlike the legitimate beastmen from Rainswan on the western continent, Isu people came from a land in the direction above the South Sea of the western continent. The legend was that their ancestors yearned for the strength of all spirits and beings, which led to the entire race being cursed, but it was just a rumor. They lived their lives quite normally and were also known to be a relatively good-looking race. All 3 women were youthful and attractive, their skin firm and supple, their scanty garments clinging tightly to their curves, wet and translucent from the water. They had never been to such a high-end hotel before. On the 10th floor high-rise, there was even a small garden and pool on the viewing balcony, and they could hardly imagine how much it would cost to stay for a day. It must be only visiting great nobles or knight priests who could afford such luxurious accommodations. One of the female students beckoned with her finger, inviting Mika over. She thought Mika must be of no ordinary status, and if she could secure him as a long-term meal ticket, that would be more than ideal. What they could not fathom was that Mika was a pirate who didn't blink an eye at murder. Seeing the flirtation of the female student, Mika didn't waste words. He got out of bed and walked slowly toward the pool to start the second round. Evening, bloody sunset. During a boarding battle, someone had crept into the ship's medicine store, and Mika had to hack at their neck with an axe several times before they finally died. That dead person's gaze solidified in horror and endless remorse and resentment. Mika woke from a nightmare, startling the Isu woman who was among the 3 in the bed, also awake, rubbing her eyes in confusion. "This room is yours until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." Mika left this message and hurriedly got dressed. The tuition had already been paid at noon, double the market price. Mika preferred to pay up front, not fearing someone might run off. Otherwise, some women, nervously fearing being taken advantage of, may provide unsatisfactory services while distracted. "How much longer will you stay in London City?" the Isu woman asked. He was generous, choosing only first-class places, and though his skin was rough, his appearance was fairly easy on the eyes, and he didn't have any perverse habits. In short, a rarity of a good man. "Maybe for half a month more. See you around if fate allows." Mika lived by the principle of not returning to the same person a second time, except in the case of exceptionally high quality. He got dressed and left the room, walking towards the gallery. The hotel's common area was first-rate, illuminated by high-quality fluorite tube lamps, with landscape paintings hanging on both sides. Mika descended the stairs, planning to return to the ship, remembering he needed to recruit crew members these next few days. If he ended up recruiting a few with contagious diseases, that would be a real problem. As Mika reached the bottom floor and was about to enter the lobby, he caught sight of a group of fully armed military masters, not from London City, and instantly got a jolt. His broad face was printed and published, and due to professional habits, he immediately turned back up the stairs to the second floor and jumped straight out of the window. Pedestrians on the street were all shocked to see a man jumping from the second floor, a distance of about 5 meters to the ground. Mika, whose agility was not as good as others on the ship, twisted his ankle in the urgent situation, and without time to properly massage and reposition it, limped away quickly. Seeing a land bird-pulled cab, he hailed it urgently and headed towards the city gate. Hotel lobby. The standard room costs 4 silver coins a day, and you can upgrade to a better room by paying another 4 silver coins. Additionally, we offer rooms with a garden and swimming pool for 15 silver coins a day. The counter's well-featured female attendant didn't finish speaking. What kind of damn hotel is this? 15 silver coins? Might as well kill me and sell my head for the money. A soldier wearing chain armor was shocked by the price. Even in a place as rich as Aaron, a decent hotel would cost about the same. Could this place even compare to Aaron? Don't make a scene, Claude scolded, thinking that since the hotel came recommended by that person, they should stay. He handed over 10 golden dragons, not fretting over the sum. To redeem his nobility and grease the wheels of relationships required at least 800 golden dragons. Once the heat died down and he had earned enough, he would leave this foreign country. Book 5 standard rooms. Will crowd in. Those who need to bunk will bunk. Though enough money was available for each man to have his room for 10 days to half a month, it wasn't the time to be wasteful. 10 golden dragons were not to be given away lightly. Those people were indeed the best option at present. Surely they wouldn't go to a merchant ship to work as sailors? They wouldn't earn the sum back in 10,000 years. He had already written back to Aaron to seek help through local contacts, but his situation now, compared to the glory days, was entirely different. He wondered if any friends would generously offer their aid. More likely they too would want to distance themselves. The Sea Erosion Cliff Secret Port was busy with the flow of talent during the early morning and around 1 in the afternoon. Once that time passed, the place quieted down. Shoddy yawned on the pier, his beautiful features striking enough to catch the attention of a few gay individuals on the neighboring smuggling ship, enough to intoxicate them with a glance. Elves were absolutely the highest of the high on the western continent. Emperor Aaron had never made a move against the elf powers to the far west of the continent, maintaining the ancient pacts. Keep staring, and I'll come up there and chop you up. Shoddy noticed someone was watching him, and those few individuals quickly averted their gaze. Shoddy was of the dark elf lineage, not from those on the western part of the continent, which held a much higher status. Having gotten into trouble, he was expelled and put his fighting hat back on. The towns surrounding London City have their market days once a week, and today happened to be the busiest time, the perfect opportunity for escaping convicts and refugees to blend into the crowds. Even after slightly lowering their strict standards, they recruited just over 30 people. It was only going to get tougher, hoping the next peak would allow for more recruits. The SS Fuma, catching Revenge, finally began to look like a real ship. The deck bustled with activity, brightly lit. On the first day, they couldn't overwork the sailors. Basic sanitary maintenance was enough. Once the ship was underway, things would be easier for them. No more takers, that's it for today. Rain finally relaxed and gestured with his hands to 2 people smoking by the railing, asking them to carry the table and chairs in front of him back onto the ship. If there were people not being put to work, it would be a waste. Since Archer was not around, Wallman took on the role of emergency backup chef, whipping up a chaotic swamp stew. He simply boiled a pot of water, threw in unchopped vegetables and meat, and it was ready to go, as long as it was spiced and tasty. These hardworking folks were happy with a sip of meat soup and a piece of bread, topped off with nearly overflowing barrels of wine after dinner. It was paradise. The treatment on board was indeed, as Ox had said, like a top-tier company among companies. When the 2 workers came down, because Rain was their immediate superior and there's nothing scarier than a manager, they fawned over him insanely. Rain quite enjoyed it, very pleased indeed. Sweet talk is useless. Do you think I like hearing it? Get a move on with the work. On a pirate ship, there's no such thing as making money just by dancing around. Less talk, more work. Rain kicked each of the workers once, speaking irritably. The workers still grinned sheepishly as they moved the stuff back onto the ship. When is Lord's big job going to start? Shoddy complained. Although only a day had passed, the unsettling sense of the unknown was the most wearing. Didn't they say a month? At the very least, it takes 10 days to prepare to set sail. If they said a month, they won't wait until the very last moment to come. Rest assured, that would be an ultimatum, at the latest in 20 days. But you listen to me, the later the better. It'd be best if they don't come for half a year, or even better, never come at all. Rain made his judgment. Not come for half a year. You can say that, but what will all these people eat? Shoddy was speechless. You elves don't have the brains of us werewolves. It's normal not to understand Lord's generosity. While I was basking in my glory days with the adventure groups, I was frequently invited by nobles to dine at their homes every now and then. It was a simple matter to wipe out a magic beast causing trouble around their estates. I'm well aware of those gentlemen's nature. You do have a point. Shadi had to admit, despite the lack of cultured people on board, they were as cunning as ghosts. At this moment, Mika walked back and saw the large deck lanterns and all the auxiliary stand lamps lit, bathing the deck in light. There were over 30 people on deck, mostly of the human race, with a few from alien races as well. A lot more people, Mika remarked, wondering how many would be left after a year. Rain and Shadi, the old hands, were tough and skilled, but for these new people coming aboard, their fate was uncertain. How did it go? Rain smirked, knowing that Mika, the grandee, must have had a smooth day. What do you mean? How did it go? Mika admitted defeat. After so many years, these people couldn't change their opening line. He had an automatic reflex to respond with those 5 words whenever he heard it. Of course, it's the dark secret forest that everyone yearns for. Rain said something extremely sleazy and didn't forget to add, "Dark original god, activate." Mika's forehead became streaked with black lines. Sometimes even he couldn't understand the words that came out of List's mouth. This damn brain learned whatever came its way, infer and extrapolate, and even perform version updates by itself. And not bad. Mika responded nonchalantly. Not bad? Damn, show-offs should just explode. Rain took a drag of his cigarette and continued. When you usually say it's not great, it means the experience is mediocre. Saying it's just SOSO implies the experience is still okay. If you say it's not bad, that means it's freaking amazing, I swear. Mika was at a loss for words and ignored the madman as he boarded the ship. The deck was bustling with activity. The BlackSail's initiation was to first deal with these self-proclaimed tough escapees by sparring under the guise of friendly competition, to take them down a peg and prevent future problems. Morrison was sparring with a few sailors in hand-to-hand combat. The outcome was inevitable. Even up against 5 or 6 men, Morrison effortlessly brought them down. It didn't even take a few seconds. In fact, it was a little over 1 second per man, all of them lying on the ground, spitting out bile, their innards churning. You call yourselves tough guys? It was just hand-to-hand. If weapons were involved, you all would have been dead by now. Morrison picked a purple berry from a fruit platter, chewed on it. The taste from the other day was quite good, so he had sent a lackey to town to buy some. Mika watched the spectacle, not because these people were weak, but who the hell could beat you? I'm not convinced. With weapons, it really could go either way. A sailor with a skull tattoo on his bald head and standing 2 meters tall spoke up, aiming to earn a rank or half a position on board, as being a mere laborer was dull. Morrison was one of those among the BlackSail who weren't particularly tall. Though he was just over 1 meter 80, he was still quite short compared to the likes of Ox and Rain. Oh, Morrison was intrigued. Pick whatever you like, just come at me, even with a musket if you wish. Those are your words. The tattooed giant chose a handy scimitar, struck first, and without offering the chance to speak, ruthlessly slashed at Morrison. Bang! The flying knife shot out like cannon fire. Nobody saw where it came from. The scimitar was knocked into the air, spinning more than 20 meters away, before plunging into the sea. The tattooed giant knelt, screaming, his wrist bent at an unnatural angle, the force of the impact dislocating it and causing it to swell. It was an eye-opening display for everyone, utterly miraculous. Also, never say you're unconvinced again. On this ship, we live by absolute obedience. I'll stress it once more, absolute obedience. You chose to embark on this pirate adventure. Your heads are literally tied to your belts, so mind what you say. Those who lack vision, their outcomes won't be pretty. Morrison spoke coldly. His half-face bearing burn marks and over a dozen knife cuts was especially terrifying, and for a moment, no one on the deck dared to speak. Hey, Brother Shah, don't bully the newbies, you'll scare them. And you guys, don't mess with him. Eat when you should eat, drink when you should drink. We've almost got too much booze in the storeroom. Tonight, everyone gets to drink 2 more bottles. We're popping champagne. As soon as Rain boarded the ship, he saw Morrison handling the newcomers. with Brother Shah being so fierce, they might get too shaken to work efficiently later. The sailors on the deck sighed in admiration. This ship really was dripping with riches, as if liquor and meat cost nothing. The tattooed giant wasn't a narrow-minded person. I'd heard that BlackSail was full of the best among men, and it's all true to the name. I'm sure following you guys was the right choice. I'm willing to stay aboard until death. The tattooed giant stood up, unable to help but admire Morrison. Morrison did not reply. He didn't want to buddy up with small fry. Hey, can't you say something more auspicious? We must speak auspiciously on this ship. None of this talk of death. We're popping champagne. Rain sent a few people to the storeroom to fetch wine. Mika sighed and instructed the tattooed giant to follow him to the infirmary below deck to set his bones and apply some medicine. Dinner time had passed. The clock approached midnight, and it was time to rest. The secret port in the cave was eerily quiet. The physician's room. In a space of over 20 square meters, items were arranged neatly with an open bookshelf without any cover, displaying a dazzling array of medical books from the northern prison, a crystallization of medical science. Apart from the entrance, there was another door that led to the pharmacy. On the side cabinet were plant oil paintings, and on the iron tray above lay a series of chisels and tweezers. Mika still had the stethoscope around his neck, not yet removed, as he read a book about dissection. It wasn't that Mika was particularly diligent in improving himself, but the original author of this manuscript was rather renowned in the academic field, with each organ depicted as an exquisite piece of art, detailed to the finest hair, unimaginable without numerous practices behind such achievement, detailing even the operational process of the heart, the inner workings of the visceral circulation, panel by panel, revealing the underlying principles in detail. The kerosene lamp was somewhat dim, so Mika opened the cap to add a bit of fuel, then wiped the dust off the glass cover with a silk scarf. At that moment, a knock on the door was heard. The person outside seemed to be somewhat restrained, their voice soft, as if afraid of disturbing Mika. Come in. Mika thought it was some new recruit. The likes of Rain and Shoddy would never be so polite. In walked a man with greasy hair and a scruffy beard, his face plastered with an ingratiating smile. Do you feel unwell? Or is it addiction? If you're looking for pain medication, I'd advise you to drop that thought now. Sitting on a chair, Mika spoke in an even tone, observing his deficient vitality and considering the possibility of an addict. Although BlackSail did not engage in that kind of trade, some smuggling ships would bulk purchase from Heavenport Market and then distribute them to local snakes on the East Shore. It wasn't that List wasn't envious of the profits from that trade, but it was so much easier to just rob them of their earnings after their dealings were done. So simple compared to the stupidity of secret signs, connections, and transport work. 3 years ago, List had set his sights on this business, targeting the routes for their unrighteous profit that was to be confiscated. But one BlackSail ship could not hijack all the drug lords of the East Shore. It was merely a drop in the ocean, incapable of influencing the normal operations of the market. The varieties of hallucinogenic substances were many: tablets, powders, tinctures, mixed and formulated from various plants and nervous toxins of magic beast glands, creating an unforgettable experience for anyone who tried them. The number of addicts in Baima Duchy large enough to be alarming. The painkillers from the Western continent were nothing like cough syrup intended for depression. They were often very potent, so strong that one wouldn't cry out in pain even from a knife slash. And Mika was well accustomed to this, having encountered such cases 100 times over. Nearly 1 out of every 10 pirates looking to do some deadly work to continue their consumption. It's not that. The man chuckled nervously, standing stiffly, unable to find his words. Then it must be physical discomfort. What symptoms do you have? Mika put the dissection book aside and put on his glasses. Even with a chair available, the man did not sit. Instead, scratching his forehead, he said, "Actually, I don't have money to see a doctor, so I came aboard to treat my leg." Mika laughed, thinking it was some minor thing. "Don't worry, as long as it's nothing serious and doesn't affect normal work. Even before we set sail, free medical care is among the privileges of BlackSail crew." "Which leg?" The man pointed to his left leg. Mika was speechless, thinking, "How dense can you be? I meant for you to roll up your trouser leg to take a look." The man hesitated for a moment before sitting down, awkwardly rolling up his left trouser leg. When he lifted the linen to his knee, the pus and blood already adhered to the fabric, stripping away some skin with each inch lifted, until revealing the thigh root, a blurry and dripping mess, his entire thigh discolored with dark purple, rife with congealed blood and pus. The man hung his head, his eyes slightly vacant. Mika's eyes narrowed slightly, silent for a long while. Then he took off his glasses. "You shouldn't have waited until this late to think about treatment," Mika said, picking up a pair of scissors and directly cutting off a strip of burst flesh from the man's leg. While the man had no sensation, dark purple and cyan blood threads spread into a net-like pattern and would continue to spread over time. Mika had been a forensic doctor and understood the study of injury marks. The thigh must have been chopped, and though it hadn't injured tendons or bones, and movement was still possible, no measures had been taken, and by now the wound was already fully infected and festering. Mika touched the surrounding areas of the spreading infection with the scissors, and the man winced in pain, his forehead breaking out in fine beads of sweat. His lips turned deathly pale. Mika couldn't imagine how he had managed to pass the boarding inspection. The Ox had a habit of tormenting people, insisting on thoroughly checking that the limbs were unimpaired before allowing them on board, and yet this man had actually slipped past Ox's watchful eyes. "Is there still a chance to treat it?" the man asked weakly, already having faintly anticipated the answer from Mika's subtle motions, but still clutching to some hope. "You're already suffering from sepsis. The skin nerves are completely necrotized. The muscles and bone tissues are also dead to some extent. You're merely holding out." Mika thought it over for a moment, his hands searching his chest pocket for his coin purse, and counted out 15 silver coins. "I'm sorry, I can't help you. You can't stay on the ship any longer either. This is some money I'm giving you personally. It's already too late now, but you can still sleep on the ship tonight, and at daybreak tomorrow, go to town and find a doctor with this money to amputate your leg." Upon hearing the word amputate, the man exhaled a few quivering breaths, then clenched his mouth and reconfirmed, "It has to be amputated?" Mika replied indifferently, starting to issue a dismissal. "Only by amputating can your life be saved, and the sooner, the better. Delaying over a week, even the high priest couldn't save you. Be quick." The man hesitated for a moment, then forced a bitter smile. "No need, I still have some money on me. If I borrowed yours, I don't know when I'd be able to repay it." "Thank you, doctor." The man didn't continue to pretend to be strong, limping away with his painful leg, hobbling out of the ship's infirmary, and closed the door behind him. Mika took a deep breath, supporting his forehead. What mix of people? Mika was speechless. The man had declined even free money, a truly unexpected choice. He had long become jaded with such matters, extinguished the kerosene lamp, and prepared to sleep. Apart from Wallman, the big guy sleeping in the warehouse, all the core members of the ship had their own bedrooms, and Mika, as premium talent, was taken special care with a room second only in size to Liss and Funds. Mika left the infirmary and returned to his bedroom. Having dealt with several incidents in the afternoon, he was weary and soon fell asleep upon lying in bed. The next morning, at the break of dawn, it was just starting to get light outside. Rooms on the first deck below the main deck had portholes that allowed light in, unlike the sailors who slept in the even lower and perpetually dark communal bunks. Mika was awakened by the sound of a group of people running outside his door. Wary, he immediately rolled out of bed, dressed only in his night clothes, and grabbed the short-handled axe from the bedside table before stepping outside. Seeing that these sailors were not armed, he breathed a sigh of relief. He grabbed a sailor at random and asked, "What happened?" The sailor answered, "Someone's been found hanged below. No idea who killed him." Mika's brow furrowed, and he said, "You don't need to go down there and interfere. Go find the captain immediately." Mika also followed the other sailors to the lower decks. Before long, he saw more than a dozen sailors holding lanterns for illumination, while a man was hanging by the neck from a doorframe with a hemp rope, the body swaying slightly with the roll of the waves. It was the man who came for leg treatment last night. The expressions of the sailors in the dimly lit passageway were all uneasy. To have someone die on the second day aboard wasn't a good omen. Mika pushed through the crowd to get close and touched the corpse's skin, which was already completely cold and rigor mortis had set in. They hadn't set sail yet, and there wasn't a watch rotation, so he must have died in the middle of the night while everyone else was sound asleep. I found this. A sailor picked up a piece of paper off the ground, weighed down by 2 empty wine bottles, both drained clean. He moved the bottles and pulled it out. "Give it to me," Mika ordered, and the sailor quickly handed it over. Mika quickly glanced over it, honestly not knowing what sort of expression to put on. At that moment, List, Fun, and Ox also arrived, looking at the body still swinging from the doorway's lintel, all wearing unpleasant expressions. Quite a few people had died on the ship, but not many during the mooring period. Today, there was one more. List was about to ask for details. "This is for you." Mika handed the paper to List. List, with a blank look, took the paper and began to read it. Thankfully, the man wasn't much educated, so there were no obscure words. "To the esteemed BlackSail captain, I am aware that you are a man of benevolence, and had shared the wealth of the Blue Bay Port's lord with the local townsfolk. My head is worth 8 golden dragons. Please trouble yourself to cut it off. Take it to the judicial hall for the money, and post it to Aunt Alicia at Maple Leaf Town in the northern Bima Duchy. I shall repay your great kindness in the next life." The content was brief, with no signature, and it was uncertain who Aunt Alicia was, but it was likely a woman's name. List felt an immense headache coming on. So doing good deeds comes back to bite you. If only I'd known, I wouldn't have shared it. Was that my own choice? Leaving it to the townspeople would give the admiral an excuse to take the lord's money from the commoners. Cycling it once was as good as pocketing it. It wasn't stolen directly from the lord's house. If it wasn't dispersed, wouldn't they relentlessly pursue me? The commoners could keep a bit in their hands. I earn a little, the admiral earns a lot. We do business with each other. It's harmony that breeds wealth. Fuck, really knows how to pick a spot to trade a good life for money. List lit up a cigarette and started smoking, wondering how the caveman could think that way. Mika said, "This man came to me last night to treat his leg, but the wound had already completely turned gangrenous, necessitating amputation. He probably thought that even if he survived, he would be a cripple, so he took his own life." Mika couldn't help thinking of that prostitute's husband from the other day. In this world, missing limbs with no one to take care of you was as good as being sentenced to death. So the case is closed now. This man committed suicide. Fun was extremely indifferent, his gaze sweeping over the surrounding sailors. Luckily, it wasn't a big deal, with little negative impact. These laborers would get over it after calming down with a big drink. List instructed them to pass the paper around to each sailor, to let them understand what happened and not to guess wildly. After all the sailors had read it, an exceptionally eager, bald man with a skull tattoo said, "That's a real man, a true tough guy. Captain, let me cut off his head for him." With those words, the tattooed tough guy picked up a scimitar and approached the corpse. "Hold it right there. What are you meddling in?" List stopped the bewildered lad. What was he helping with? Wasn't this just causing trouble? He figured that after Brother Shaw demonstrated his power yesterday, he had shown a liking for putting the newcomers through their paces. Next, he had to consider the importance of initiative. Good work brought rewards, and only then could one have hope for the future and auspicious living. The tattooed brute froze, thought for a moment, and said, "Look at my pig brain. Us pirates go into the judicial hall. Wouldn't that be like walking into a trap? Better to just toss him into the sea." List's eyelid twitched, wanting to kill someone. This man had initiative, all right, but he was foolish. "Just rest," List said as he took back the man's last letter, carefully folding it and placing it inside a pocket in his clothing. Although he was only aboard BlackSail for a day, since he trusted me and was willing to hand over his life's earnings, then he's one of us. As the saying goes, laid to rest in the earth brings peace. Let's carry the guy up the mountain and find a high spot with a nice view to bury him. For his 8 golden dragons of settling in fee, I'll cover it. List was sucking on his smoke, certain this was the best solution. Plus, this fellow had indeed been a man's man. Only, it was unknown whether the woman named Antalicia was worth his sacrifice. In the passageway, a bunch of sailors also sighed. In the underworld of the Western continent, any significant power had the concept of a settling-in fee. On the lawless high seas, it shouldn't be necessary. No pirate ship ever had such a rule. Truly, List was a man of righteousness. Fanu List was winning hearts by spending those 8 golden dragons for a measure of loyalty, and it was worth it. It at least demonstrated that anyone who died a worthy death, willing to throw themselves into their work wholeheartedly, would have their final affairs taken care of. Just go ahead and sell your life. Ox, eternally poker-faced, saw that the Baima Duchy was now plagued with bandits, the court powerless, the great nobles with hideous faces on the very brink of collapse, just needing one final push. Bosun Rain was the last to arrive, asking about the situation. What bad luck? You lot, take him and get him buried. Don't skimp on it, make it decent. Today at noon, let's have our chief cook Archer slaughter a few sheep. Back in the day, that old man was a court chef, with skills ranking high on the Western continent. Let's have a good meal to dispel the bad luck, something auspicious. Stop your moaning. That guy died a righteous death. At sea, it's considered a happy funeral. All right, disperse. All of you go scrub the deck. Before lunch, I'll come to inspect. If I find a speck of dust or grease, forget about having lamb. Rain was barking orders, eager to get the matter settled, and seeing that some new kitchen assistants were recruited yesterday, Archer could start cooking soon. List was speechless. Only you could blow it up like this, a happy funeral, huh? The sailors, hearing about the sheep, their eyes widened. A court chef no less. That's real nobility treatment indeed. Truly a happy funeral. The group, excited, kept shouting awesome nonstop, feeling the blessings of the man, and merrily headed up to the deck. Leading the group, the tattooed brute, and a few men untied the hemp rope from the doorway, lowering the dead man. They found a stretcher plank from the shared sleeping quarters. Be careful, don't bump the man. These are the best conditions we can manage on this ship, but let's do our best to send him off grandly. The tattooed brute was at the front, shouldering the most weight, carrying the body up the mountain above the secret port for the burial. 10 minutes later, at the end of the weather deck in the navigating room, BlackSail's middle-aged recreational card-playing room, Archer was busy with the new kitchen assistants preparing lunch, while Rain and Morrison supervised outside. The rest wore gloomy expressions. Although Wallman had a degree in mid-level history, the cultural toxins of the marshes weren't easily shrugged off. He was relatively the most superstitious person on the ship. Someone's already died before we set sail. That's not a good omen. Wallman hesitated and added, hating all nobles could be an ominous sign. We should quickly grab whatever sailors we can and set out to sea. As for the big job, better forget it. With the money we have on the ship, we could live comfortably for quite some time. As for the privateer license, not even the big shots at Heavenport could manage it. In my opinion, we should focus on longevity. Ox dismissed the idea. Everything can be neglected, except for the crew. Even if they're only underlings, if we encounter combat at sea. If those who should manage the sails can't, if those who should man the guns can't, the weak and sick will simply collapse from fear, and we'd all go down with the ship. Swan had more ambition than Wallman, effectively Fun's mouthpiece. And, put it plainly, the loot I snuck out is on the ship. We're wealthier now than the big shots at Heavenport. What's a pirate overlord good for? We should aim for bigger things. Everyone was shocked by Swan's words. The usually silent thief, when he did speak, it was explosive, set on getting this job done, a vision for lofty accomplishments. Even List was unsure, a materialist warrior at heart. But admittedly, the bad luck was too much, and the details of Lord's big job were still unknown. Suddenly Haywood opened the door, surveying the sullen faces inside, and cheerfully announced, "Surprise! Earl sent a gift, says he wants to treat us well, to improve the brothers' lives. The carriage is filled with boxes. Who knows what's inside?" Shoddy slapped his forehead. Rain had hit the nail on the head. No point waiting 5 days. someone had arrived now. Indeed, it's a big job. Was it an assassination of Emperor Aaron or something else? The secret port was established by the nobles of London City, belonging to the territory of the aristocratic family, used to evade the duchy's tariffs, store private arms, and shelter malevolent forces while collecting docking and protection fees. Paying the people who collect protection fees was just the threshold to enter the game. The BlackSail was now a temporary private militia for the nobles, acting temporarily as their white gloves, naturally exempt from the docking fees. List and his party descended onto the pier. Shoddy glanced at the scene. It was more than just one carriage. 3 had arrived, full of style, all pulled by white steeds. The carriages carried over 20 boxes, large and small, all beautifully packaged. Not just any shoddy wooden boxes making up the numbers, but good wood, even carved with exquisite animal patterns. The Count's envoy greeted List with a slight bow, his palm resting gently on his chest. But as for what he thought of these pirates internally, that was another matter. "Captain, this is a small token from the Count. The ship has been sitting in this patch of water, and staying here for too long can be vexing. Therefore, a modest gift is prepared, hoping—" The envoy hadn't finished his polite remarks. Rain and the others didn't bother with these ceremonious acts. A group of them had already gone up to open the boxes. The envoy smiled awkwardly, seeing that these people disliked the cumbersome formalities. The boxes contained recreational goods, tobacco, liquor, tea, coffee powder, all top-shelf products. Rain grabbed a pinch of tobacco, smelled it, and then chewed on it for a while. As they often plundered merchant ships and had to appraise the goods on board, weighing several dozen to hundreds of tons, the core members of BlackSail were all top-notch connoisseurs. This is good stuff from Kangwoo Mountain, supposedly handled by beauties from cultivation to harvesting to processing, including some damn chest massage technique. Man, they really splurged shit. Rain didn't actually care much. These bloodthirsty men couldn't discern fine from poor quality tobacco. It all smoked the same. Isn't it a waste of money? Why not just convert it into cash? All these roundabouts are damn stingy, probably just too much stock. Try to offload it to beggars. Morrison also picked up a bottle of wine, bit open the cork, and tasted it. It was a fruit wine brewed by what elves, sweet and fresh with a dense flavor, smooth going down the throat, and even had a calming and cooling effect. In this early winter weather, it felt a bit chilly to drink, a rare commodity not for sale. "This could damn well send us to hell," Morrison commented, recognizing the high-quality goods. The envoy, still smiling awkwardly, didn't expect that just opening the boxes wasn't the end. They had started using the goods directly. Dressing up these trashes? Liz pretended to look down on these, randomly opened a few lids, glanced, and then closed them, actually feeling somewhat intimidated. Those tricky things were hidden and not mentioned. Better just ask directly later. If they still beat around the bush without giving a straight answer, then it's time to leave. The envoy twitched, thinking, how could these be trash, brother? These 20-some boxes could be gifts for a small noble's wedding banquet. Of course not. There's a gift that the Count specifically instructed me to hand over to you personally. The envoy pulled a palm-sized, exquisite box from a secret compartment in the carriage's cargo hold and opened it in front of List, revealing about 100 or so golden, eternal, and time dragons. Fuck, Shoddy cursed, fearing they were expecting them to die. He couldn't think of any job that would require a gang of pirates like them. These were just deposits and gifts. If you have the money, why not hire a heroic-level adventure group? An all-star lineup? Wouldn't that be better? There was only one answer. It was an absolutely secretive mission that could not see even a hint of light, entirely hidden. He couldn't use his own men, but rather must employ the notorious cutthroats from Heaven Port, a lawless spot within a lawless area. He racked his brain. It couldn't possibly be a business dispute. If it was about killing a rival lord, it would inevitably come back to haunt him. It must be something more secret, unspeakable, with profound impacts and significant ramifications. The envoy was unaware of the recent events on the BlackSail ship. These gifts, intended to show sincerity, under ominous signs, turned instead into a gnawing debt. In that case, I think we can return these items, and we'll head back to Heavenport in the coming days. Originally, Ox was against casually dragging people onto the ship, but this time he sensed trouble, not only because of the recent suicide on board, but also because of a deep-seated, instinctive, ominous premonition. This might be more dangerous than any job BlackSail had ever undertaken, perhaps not even a trip to the royal capital, but rather an armed march to express strong opposition. Right, it's really freaking scary, like we're heading to our execution, Rain said. Even though he joked about it being like an auspicious funeral, he also felt enormously gloomy and agreed. Captain, what do you think? I believe it's time to initiate the crew voting, a democratic decision. Mika, go call Archer and Haywood out. Swan remained silent, since Finn had not yet stated his position. All right, let's proceed with the voting. List made a decision. The waters between the western continent and the Far East Islands were the most prosperous and, in a way, the most democratic region for pirates. At times, pirates were even more humane and democratic than merchant ships or warships. They did not beat their crew or kill their mates. Unlike mountain bandits who could intimidate with just a knife, pirates required a ship, a significant investment, and knowledge of complex sail control systems. They needed to know dozens of different knots, and operating a cannon cost a lot of money. Several people needed to work together on these tasks, typically requiring intelligent individuals. Anyone who could fill any role on a ship was akin to a mid to high-level tech worker with years of experience in the 21st century. All leading pirate gangs at Heavenport were not spontaneous grassroots movements, but were splinters from various mainstream entities. Night orders, adventure groups, defeated soldiers, and persecuted former nobles, all with bizarre backgrounds. This also meant they were more organized, and thus longer-lasting and more profitable. 110 years ago, an old veteran among the maritime veterans published the Pirate Bill. It was mentioned in the classic Acania travelogue of the Western continent and is still considered the gold standard. The rules were traced out by Big Brother. Following this set method, there could be no mistakes. The two most representative and democratic rules were: first, everyone on the ship, regardless of their position, had a vote on all daily matters. Second, in the event of major disagreements, a decision had to be made by a full crew vote. The rules varied from ship to ship, most only partially adopting them and adjusting according to the situation on board. However, the rules on List's ship were a disruptive innovation to the entire pirate industry. He knew well that in this saturated market, he had to carve out a differentiated track, focus on critical paths, establish a grip on a vertical domain, gather user profiles for rapid market response, connect product depth continually to accumulate momentum, and realize the value coupling of all crew members before finding the activation point for frequent high-stakes engagements. Simply put, the illiterate among the crew mingled little, dutifully receiving a salary each month. They only needed to share the dividends after a successful heist. War was a training camp for pirates. Peace was their true battlefield. On SS Fuma Kaching Revenge, different rules applied when they were at sea versus when they were not. Once out at sea, every corps member counted as one vote, and List had only one vote. To keep the sailors content and prevent mutiny after bloodshed, which could stop the ship from moving, at sea, crew members with responsibilities counted as one vote per 5 people, those without responsibilities as one vote per 10 people, theoretically balancing or even outweighing the votes of the management. Before setting out to sea, the sailors didn't count. Corps members had one vote each, and List had 2 votes. I think it's time to leave. The entire group from BlackSail gathered on the pier, with Wallman the first to state his position, casting 1 vote. I also agree we should leave. Shoddy, who was not foolhardy, knew that Archer was stubborn and frantically signaled him with his eyes. I don't understand much, but I'll agree, Archer said nonchalantly. Ox and Rain had already stated their positions earlier, which meant there were already 5 votes. One more vote, and they could hire a broker to casually bring in 100 people, rush the material purchase orders, and have everyone act quickly. They could return to Heavenport first and set off in just a few days. Seeing that this group was about to leave, The Count's envoy's head swelled enormously. If they left, he would be utterly ruined upon returning home. So he quickly released a significant piece of news. Liszt was acutely aware that it wasn't that his people were afraid of trouble. Every single one of them was a hardened character. Nevertheless, the Earl was playing coy, and someone had just committed suicide on the ship. It was an ominous sign. The sense of the unknown was akin to eating a meal with a noose around one's neck. Nobody wanted to be used as cannon fodder. The messenger was already in a panic. The Earl's intention was to have the messenger stall BlackSail for a few days and then extend an invitation to his home after a week. "Please, don't be anxious, said the messenger with a forced smile. "The Earl wishes to invite the captain to a family banquet in a week's time." Family banquet? Finn repeated the phrase, greatly shocked by it. A so-called family banquet was simply sharing a meal and having a private conversation. It would be understandable if the banquet was for an adventure group, other nobles, or even commoners, but inviting pirates was another matter entirely. The Earl had yet to make direct contact with them, and by inviting them into his home, the association would become a matter of record. Colluding with pirates was an offense punishable by beheading. This was the utmost sincerity. The people present felt as though thunder had struck their ears. They had never heard of such a novel situation, and it seemed that securing a privateer license would be a minor affair in comparison. As long as they survived, they were bound to soar to great heights. Liszt was also taken aback by the move. The Earl was playing a bold game. After pondering for a while, he made a decision. A family banquet meant revealing the nature of the task at hand, and to take care of the emotions of the other stalwarts, a compromise had to be found. So far, he had shown great respect to the Earl, but it was time to apply some pressure. Despite the sincerity already displayed, it wasn't enough. The Earl needed to understand that to employ BlackSail for a life-threatening big job, he would have to show even more humility. A week's delay would not suffice. "How about this?" Liszt suggested. "We'll keep these items for now. You go back and relay a message to the Earl that if he can arrange it for tomorrow, that would be excellent. If that's not possible, then these cases will be returned. We're just unsure what the Earl wants from us, and the brothers here are really on edge." Having said that, Liszt adopted the demeanor of a pirate ship captain with a cold tone. Even if it's the esteemed Earl himself, some respect must be given. "Don't leave us hanging here." Listening to this, the messenger felt a crushing pressure, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he tried to explain. "Tomorrow is too soon. There's a lot to prepare." "It's not." He didn't finish his sentence. "What did you say?" Liszt feigned not having heard, shouting almost at the top of his lungs. Morrison's smirk was as unpleasant as his disfigured face, toying with a flying knife. Seeing the resolve in the faces of these desperados present, "I'll go back and speak to the master right away." The messenger dared not delay and rode away from the secret port on horse. The secret port had its own smuggling ships, courtesy of the Earl. "Be careful. There are the Earl's people in the secret port. If something goes wrong, we might have to fight," Finn whispered to the people around him. Now that they knew the Earl had a big job planned, though they didn't know what it was, if they thought to leave directly, the Earl might contemplate silencing them. Archer was still oblivious to the mood and said loudly, "Bah, those weaklings, I could kill them easily. Brother Shah could cleave 1,000 of them without breaking a sweat. Just be done with it. What's there to talk about?" "I thank you," said Morrison sarcastically, "truly flattered by the faith you have in me." Archer, already a bit tipsy, exclaimed, "This booze is really good." Liszt felt dumbfounded. The current situation was about holding on to the items, which weren't yet theirs. It would take a quarter of an hour to ride from the secret port to London City. Less than an hour passed. The messenger came back with a response. "The Earl has arranged the family banquet for tomorrow evening," said the messenger with the utmost respect. "The captain should come around 7 o'clock, and you may bring 2 attendants." His gaze scanned quickly over Ox, Rain, and Wallman. Additionally, it would be best not to draw any attention. Hearing these words, everyone felt at ease, but the murderous intent thickened. If Liszt attended the banquet, either BlackSail would follow the Earl and break free, or they would break free from the secret port themselves. Given that it was a significant task, once they knew what it entailed, it wouldn't be so easy to just walk away. "We understand. We'll accept your gifts." List directed a few sailors to move all the boxes from the 3 carriages onto the ship. From now on, they had to walk a tightrope. The time had come to noon. The tattooed, burly man had already buried the man with the gangrenous leg on the highest flatland of the mountain, facing the vast sea. He could finally rest in peace. On the deck, it was also time for the meal. All the sailors were divided into 2 extremes. On the one hand, some treated the lamb in their plates with extreme care. This was not some sloppy meat soup, but a large chunk of real lamb, treasured as if it were a rare treasure of the world. They gently tore off a piece and chewed slowly, followed by a large mouthful of mashed potatoes, coupled with a bottle of wine. They were in heaven. The other extreme gobbled up their food as if taking revenge, as though they wished they could nibble their own hands off. "We base the rules on cleaning our own plates and stacking them neatly, but you all act as if your ghosts starve to death. Licking your plates clean?" Archer grumbled, watching his culinary artistry be demolished with distaste, thinking they deserved their previous plight. Wild boars can't appreciate the finer meal, whether you savor it like gold or gobble it down whole. How can you taste anything that way? Furthermore, Archer felt incredibly unlucky. It was not until now that he realized there had been a suicide the previous night. It wasn't any welcoming party. Damn it, he had woken up early only to participate in a funeral. No wonder they slaughtered a sheep. Archer made his way to the navigation room. The mood of the group there was changeable. Some were elated while others were worried. Even though the outcome was supposed to be revealed the following night, they were still guessing what the job entailed. "I think someone wants to climb up the ranks and get rid of the admiral," Rain hinted, making a throat-slashing gesture. "That's impossible. It's not a matter involving London City. At the very least, it has nothing to do with anyone in the city," Finn analyzed. "How can you be so sure?" Ox asked. "Shutting down the gambling dens requires a bunch of people to rampage and kill. It's normal for them to look for us. To kill an admiral, there's no need for BlackSail. They could just hire a thief from the Thief Guild to assassinate him. Bringing a large group would only cause chaos. Moreover, it's definitely not in London City. He has his own force there, his own dependable people. He would certainly not engage outsiders for such a big task. The fact that he entrusted us with this mission must mean we have some irreplaceable quality." Finn pondered over what made BlackSail irreplaceable. Hard men were everywhere. If you offered them enough money, adventurers from the Adventurers Guild would take to the sea without any fuss. Irreplaceable quality, is it related to people or to the task itself? Shoddy also speculated. Could it be linked to something on the first officer and second officer? In that case, it might be some elaborate trap they've set, Wallman guessed. Mirror Sea and the western continent are separated by more than 100,000 nautical miles. Their reach doesn't extend that far, Ox dismissed. To catch me, such high-ranking people wouldn't trade with the Earl of London City. It would be the most elite forces sent by the Magic Energy Industrial Committee, Finn spoke confidently. Archer walked in and saw them deep in thought, pondering, and said randomly, "What's all this talk about irreplaceability? Maybe he just wants a bunch of pirates familiar with places like Heavenport." An idea suddenly struck List. He stood up and exclaimed, "Even a wise man can miss the obvious, while a fool might stumble upon the truth." "Leave it to you, Archer. I've almost got it. 9 times out of 10, we're likely tasked with delivering some cargo or escorting someone to Heavenport. It's unlikely to be cargo because we could just abscond with it. If it's a person, then this person must be of immense importance." List conjectured. "That makes sense. Well done, Captain." Rain agreed with the logic. The reason for the long wait must be for either the cargo or person to arrive. Everything became clear once the Earl's secretive actions were considered. "Damn it, it better not be a buxom beauty," Mika commented sarcastically. "Hee, a busted beauty who runs away from her marriage, huh? That's something that would keep everyone entertained, but you gotta be careful not to get hit by a semi-truck when you're up there." Morrison made an explosive remark. calling off an engagement trend. Huh? Shadi was speechless. Worthy of connecting with immortals surviving 9 lives, sacrificing oneself as a seed to verify the pathway to immortality. At the end of the immortal path, who is the peak? Once meeting Mika, all comes to naught. Chapter 1. The Fallen Genius, The Power of Pirates. 3 segments. Rain mocked as he continued. The fighting spirit origin god, activate. Fast forward to the brother-killing proof. Ox closed his eyes, considering the need for some vigorous action for this bunch of idiots. Otherwise, how do you tackle people when bounty hunters, the Navy, and the Thief Guild come slashing? Even List, the initiator, couldn't stand it anymore. A competition of who could be more abstract, tarnishing the already notorious profession of piracy, elevating it to an evil height it never deserved. What compilation? Mika gave in. My eyes break in despair. My love lost forever. Revive, my love. Wallman suddenly shouted. Suddenly, the whole place fell silent, with everyone slack-jawed. Wallman scratched his head. Wasn't that phrase meant for this context? He drank his wine to ease the awkwardness. After an unbearably long, pin-drop silence of 10 seconds. Regardless of whom we pick up, speaking of transporting goods isn't easy, just taking a boat ride. And here I thought it was some big job. Archer thought it was another opportunity for a killing. There are always people to exploit, so why not? Finn shook his head. If it's about picking someone up, the final payment is made at the end. There are many factors to consider, not just the guards along the way, but the handover when we arrive at the destination. We might even need to be responsible for the response. Too many variables. That's actually the toughest part. Finn explained. What's so tough about it? If it really comes down to it, just kill them halfway, or sell them as slaves somewhere, can even use them as a ransom. Archer, unfazed, continued to act tough. Mr. Archer is indeed great at high talk. Rain mocked. If it were really about transporting important people, would anyone entrust an easy target to you? At the least, there would be 2 or 3 bodyguards who could hold their own. The Lord would definitely be smarter than you. Otherwise, he'd have been torn apart in the cutthroat nobility struggles long ago. Speaking of which, can it include 2 people? Any candidates in mind? Finn asked List. Isn't that obvious? Obviously, General Fun and Brother Shah. If any problem arises, there'd be backups. List didn't need to think twice, bringing along the human rights card and supermodel card. Without them, the deal might fall through, and his life could be on the line. Family banquet, huh? Sounds high class, but it's just a ragged party if it's among nobles. Morrison commented offhandedly. Finn almost spat out his tea. The man had seriously made another explosive statement. All right, let's not talk about that anymore. Anyway, we'll see the outcome tomorrow night. Speaking of which, I've been too busy yesterday and this morning. Here, have a look at this. Finn produced a newspaper bought at the Adventurers Guild, intending to expose these illiterates to current affairs. He figured they should stop following List's meaningless abstract quotes all day long, which were dumbing them down. The group began passing it around the newspaper. Carriage. Rain's eyes narrowed. Errant people think the origin of everything in the universe is the carriage. There's a secret in these 2 words. Does a carriage have horses? Carriage. All right, cut it out. I know what you're going to say. List quickly interjected, as Wallman, the notorious anti-Aaron madman, was directly amused. Errant people are really generous, aren't they? They don't even have horses, yet they entertain the masses. After making a few snide remarks, Wallman began reading carefully, discovering that this invention could quickly transport goods, or even people. He blinked rapidly, his long bifurcated antenna twitching. After a long struggle, he finally blurted out, "The Aaron Empire is about to be destroyed." Wallman handed the newspaper to the next person, thus commenting, "I know you are anti-Aaron and a madman. Setting aside the facts, no, speaking only of the facts, how is it going to be destroyed?" List was speechless. Before Manja's wetland, Wallman's hometown, was designated as an autonomous region. Residents needed to venture out to make ends meet, but life inside was bearable. After the Emperor's arbitrary slaughters, the Malthus trap was lifted, the population decreased, but life became more miserable. Autonomous region, duchy, they sound nice, but they have the same nature. Autonomy is allowed, but only a little bit. You govern all the awful affairs, and I govern all the good affairs. Products native to the great wetland had to be included in the free market trade. To make the wetland a livable environment for the human race, a corvée system was introduced. Every adult subdragon male had to perform 3 years of corvée, which is basically free labor with no pay at all, a fate worse than imprisonment. Thus, the Great Wetland Major Rebellion happened a few years ago, with a local benevolent dictator siphoning blood from his brethren for wealth and glory, fought with the rebels. Wallman was one of those rebels and a leader. At first, they scored continuous victories since the soldiers of the benevolent ruler were feeble as paper tigers, but then the ruler just shook reinforcements, summoning the Aran army. The rebels were suppressed within a month. More than 10 years ago, having become a slave of a fallen state, Wallman completely despaired, knew that restoration of his homeland was hopeless, and fled overseas. Wallman started to speak. The Aran Empire seems to always be winning, and indeed it has always been. But the world's great trends focus on identity recognition, your so-called ideology. It has turned the entire country into a war machine. Every time it overspends its national strength, it needs to invade more places to replenish. Excessive military budgets, the high status of soldiers indefinitely boosted, the increasingly domineering military forces at home must also push the emperor to continue conquering so that they won't lose their influence and maintain their current status. It's like an abyss. Even if the emperor wants to stop, he can't. He has been set up, turned into a puppet of conquering. Yes, the emperor has always been winning, but he has just postponed the explosion of every overextended invasion into other countries. Hidden under the high welfare treatments of the Aran officials is the endless hatred of other countries on the Western continent. Once the railway is up, and it must be up, the Western continent will have thorough connectivity. With the emperor's military genius, he will easily conquer the whole Western continent. Wallman finished speaking. Liz gave a forced laugh. If the emperor has conquered everything, already ending the game with ease, how could destruction still occur? Liz thought Wallman had gone completely mad, just like the ultimate madman from the church court. Because of this, Aran will be destroyed, and it will be a catastrophic collapse. Now, only a few nations like Jiwang, Pedin, Gureg, and the toughest Lostra are still holding out. The emperor has already conquered most of the Western continent. Once the railway is established, all these territories will become an impenetrable fortress. At this time, to approach Jiwang and Pedin to attack Aran, they will refuse to collaborate, only caring for themselves, until all are annihilated. Even if someone has the gift of the gab and forms an alliance, they will be riddled with mutual suspicion and surely defeated. Destroying these nations is easy until the emperor reigns supreme over the continent. But once the emperor reigns supreme, everyone will be Aran, so whose high welfare must be maintained. Yet then, Aran will still be a war machine, still the same old Aran beneath the upper 3 flags, still the same old Aran military officials, still having to continue invading, though the methods will have changed, and even as slaves of the fallen state, corvée must still be served. If the emperor decides to purge his court, to enforce a major purge, but now that it's a military world, backlash is inevitable and will accelerate the collapse of Aran. He is already set up, unable to move. When the emperor reaches his triumphant peak, it will also be the moment of his destruction. Under the corvée system, by then there will certainly be revolts, albeit ineffectual ones, but just by persuading the old royal families from various regions to restore their countries and attack Aran, all the past hidden dangers burst forth. Even if the emperor doesn't conquer everything, just with enough territories conquered and enough people serving corvée, a collapse is inevitable. I've said it, the world's great trends focus on identity recognition, on ideology. Aran is still strong, but we can lose countless times, while Aran can only afford to lose once. Just once, and it will be a catastrophic collapse. The faster the railroad is built, the better. After all, not only the emperor himself enjoys the railroad. Even without the railroad, it's just a delay in this process. Aaron might have decades, or even a century more to exist, but now, I thought I'd never see that day. But it's coming sooner than expected. Wallman finished speaking. Everyone present was stunned. This imposing figure actually had such profound insights. General Finn squinted his eyes. Although Wallman was not entirely correct, he had a point. Wallman did not yet know about Claude, that the Emperor was already extending his reach to Baima Duchy. With another massacre, it would indeed be a scenario demanding corvée. Having finished your lofty talk right inside the cabin, it is. List was dumbfounded. Wallman, also known as Little Juga. What a moderate history degree, Rain marveled, deserving to be one of only 2 educated people on a ship. Ox frowned, his hand on his shin, deep in thought. Like Wallman, he too had once led troops in a battle. Right now it's fantasy time. Archer said this completely oblivious to the mood. Lord's job wasn't even finished yet. Damn it, Aaron was destroyed. Theory was theory, but the Emperor was no embroidered pillow. Emperor of Zhou. No one dared to mention his real name. In the Western continent, there was a superstition. If one's destiny was mighty, one must never call them by name, lest they be harmed by the invisible forces of fate and be stricken with misfortune and ailments. The Emperor was such a domineering man. Calling him the mightiest man in the Western continent wasn't an overstatement. His tales were famous throughout the Western continent, known to every household, purely because he was so overpowering. Minstrels, driven by their wild adoration, would embellish the tales. They were the main spreaders of these stories, turning them into fantasies as they told and retold them. The monarch of Old Erin was incompetent, obsessed with astrology and arcane mysticism, yearning for the secret power of bodily immortality. Originally, the Emperor was an ordinary man, rumored to possess chi strong enough to rival that of a mountain giant, but without ambition, content to be the mayor of his hometown small town, not looking for trouble unless provoked. That was when the court astrologer began to stir trouble. Your Majesty, you're going to be slaughtered. This man, a descendant of the overlord from 2,000 years ago, would ride a silver dragon at the head of a 1,000,000-strong army, marching towards the royal capital. Dragons in the Western continent weren't just giant flying lizards that everyone could ride. They were legendary creatures whose dragon breath could engulf all life in devastation. The monarch went stupid. Silver dragon, where would one find that? Better to find this descendant and kill him first. No man, no dragon. This descendant was, of course, the Emperor. The Emperor was quickly found, facing a vanguard of 200 iron-clad heavy cavalry. Alone with an iron sword and dressed in only linen clothes, he slew 70 or 80 men. The remaining 100 or so terror-stricken soldiers beat a hasty retreat. The Emperor figured he couldn't just stupidly let himself be killed. Fine, wait and see. The Emperor couldn't think of a good plan for the time being. It wasn't easy to deal with the ruler of country. Meanwhile, the townspeople began to flee, seeing everyone deserting him. They all ran off. The Emperor couldn't sit by idly. He reassured his folks, "You don't need to worry. There's no need to abandon your homes. I'll go and chop up the Duke in charge of this area first." Alone, with an iron sword, wearing just linen clothes and accompanied by only a dozen or so poorly trained town guards, he went to storm the Duke's castle. As for why these dozen or so were willing to follow him, it was because the Emperor had a certain charisma, a charm, that anyone who encountered him would be instantly subdued. As for why the Duke didn't send out troops in advance, it's because he simply did not know. He thought they were an adventure group. By the time he realized what was happening, they had already killed the castle guard and stormed in through the wide-open gate. These town guards, with the Emperor's charisma, turned into valiant gods of war, and together with the Emperor, they cut through the castle. The Emperor was ecstatic. When he saw the terrified Duke, he got straight to business. "Lend me some troops to express grievances at the royal capital. Yes or no? Give me a clear answer, quickly." The imaginary tale paused here, for in the early days, the Emperor was not well known. The stories were various and vague, mostly speculative, with countless other versions. After he truly started his rise, The later events were corroborated by all sides, more preposterous than fiction, terrifying beyond measure. Compared to the events that really happened, the earlier ones were nothing but a drop in the ocean. However absurd, they seemed so real. Because reality, the truth, was simply too overpowering. 100,000 cavalry approached the royal capital. In fact, these troops were a mixed bag, including bandits and brigands gathered from far and wide, and soldiers borrowed from various nobles. The monarch of Old Erin was incompetent and ruthless. The nobles had long harbored dissent, and they lent troops to the emperor only to use him as a pawn, a foot soldier, to test the mettle of the reigning monarch. The troops they lent were the sick and weak, the horses frail and feeble. Among the 100,000, only 2,000 or 3,000 were clad in iron armor. The rest wore cracked leather armor weathered by severe wear. The emperor hesitated. The royal capital was impregnable, its walls 10 zhang high, its defending soldiers' murderous intent piercing tens of miles, its dignity inviolable. Moreover, the Erin National Advisor had laid down a great formation. Sending these wounded soldiers into battle was akin to sending them to their deaths, paving stones for the ambitions of the great nobles. Among the troops were loyal men who had followed the emperor on his campaigns. One of them, despite having lost an eye, still went to war, deeply moved by the emperor. But the emperor made a decision. He decided to withdraw his troops then and there. The observing great nobles were in an uproar, and the world was shocked. What a coward! The emperor abandoned his army and fled the battlefield on a fast horse. His 100,000 troops, already injured and weakened, were thrown into chaos. The origins of these 100,000 people were diverse. The king was fatuous and unjust, believing slanderous accusations to capture and kill witches, boiling hearts to concoct immortal elixirs, leading to many because of slaughtered wives and daughters, officials and soldiers killing the innocent for recognition, and thus had no choice but to revolt. There were also tenant farmers who toiled away daily but could not pay off their debts, forced by the nobles to march to their death for the emperor. Endless numbers of wanderers who lost their homes and families due to the king's incompetence and internal strife among the lords. All the tragic products of Old Erin's system had gathered here. Such were their hardships. All carried the belief in overturning their fates as they came this far. When the emperor left, the collapse began from within, as if the sky had fallen. Yet the one-eyed soldiers managed to stabilize these 100,000 people, telling them the emperor had not wished to create resentful spirits by leading them to their deaths. He went alone to confront the evil dragon, to fulfill the prophecy and end the dynasty of Old Erin. Even if it meant starving to death, they would die here. The 100,000 formed a prison of their own, waiting for the emperor's return. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. 3 days passed. Since the emperor's whereabouts were unknown, all supply lines had been cut off, and no further provisions were being transported in. The remaining supplies could last at most 3 days. 4 days passed. 5 days passed. 6 days passed. The emperor still had not returned, and there was not a bit of food or water left. Until the 10th day, dark clouds gathered heavily. First, a fierce wind swept in, blowing sand and rocks about, and then the heavens roared as the wind shook apart the clouds, clearing the sky in an instant. Then came darkness. A massive creature spread its wings across the firmament, 10 miles wide, casting a shadow as if to eclipse the sun, its majestic presence and thunderous dragon roars causing trembling in the guts, rending the earth asunder. The emperor did not ride the silver dragon. He had fought and wrestled it all the way here. Huge chains bound the silver dragon's neck, its wings flailing tumultuously until it approached the royal capital's gates. With the chains tightening, the silver dragon's head was severed, and its colossal corpse, like a meteorite from beyond the skies, smashed through the city gates, drenching the city of sin in a tide of blood red. A man stood upon the earth. The emperor emerged, bathed in blood. The 100,000-strong army surged forward, capturing the royal capital in one fell swoop, heading straight for the court, killing the astrologer, then beheading the monarch of old Aaron atop his throne. No nobles dared enter the royal capital, only sending envoys to negotiate matters. At this time, the emperor was just 26 years old, full of vigor, proclaimed himself emperor within the royal capital, changing the country's form of government to an imperial system, completely reshuffling all nobles, great and small. He conferred fiefs. The emperor must be the diva. Li Sight smoked a cigarette and said, "Anyway, the mountains on the East Coast are high and the emperor is far away. Unlike the inland, he can talk about it as much as he wants. I admit that the emperor is very strong, but if I join Bima Zykajan to replace him and then be promoted to King Bima, directly sent Xia Di to seduce his daughter, and then waited for him to die of old age, then Xia Di would naturally come to power. And if I kill Xia Di again, I would directly become the ruler of Aram. How should the emperor respond?" What a brilliant idea. Xia Di had nothing to say and rolled her eyes. It's unexpected that there are such feminine movements. Woolman was shocked and added, "Women nowadays no longer have to be tough and tender, but appreciate your neutrality. Your current status is equivalent to a fitness instructor, a rapper, a veteran barbecue shop owner who has been a military instructor, and a Genshin Impact player who does not smoke traditional cigarettes. You finished all the bonuses, right? The flower language of the steel wire ball is tolerance and wealth." Rin added, "Wait a minute. Micah discovered a blind spot. This plan doesn't seem to require you to become the king at all. This is completely meaningless. As long as Xia Di launches an attack, the Alan Empire will be directly destroyed." Xia Di sneered. Veins popped up on her forehead. Li Sight was shocked indeed and said seriously, "As a captain, I order you, now, if you go to seduce the emperor's daughter, I will allocate 30 gold dragons from public funds for travel expenses, skincare products, and renting a hotel room. The actual combat experience in the brothel is 10 times the KO fist training fee, and BlackSail can conquer the Western continent just by waiting for the emperor to die of old age naturally at the port of heaven. I'm shocked. Is there such a spiritual time, house brothel? What on earth can you achieve through cultivation?" Wallman was puzzled. It said that it's a 10-fold KO fist. All the indicators have increased 10-fold. Let alone humans, monsters can be killed instantly. Ren commented. The rest of the group had left the navigation room, showing no interest in the brain-dead conversation. All the supplies for the overseas mission were ordered yesterday and will be delivered to the city one after another. Delivery is not guaranteed in Megong. Swan and I will go to the city to rent 10 carriages later. The sailors on the ship help carry the cargo and are all brought to the ship. Don't become idle every day. After going to sea, they have to work intensively. Asvin said he also asked Oaks and others to keep an eye on them and arrange some work for them if they had nothing to do. They could train in combat skills and so on. They could also learn carpentry skills from Haywood and fix any problems with the ship during the voyage. Efficient solution. When they got to the deck, they saw several crew members who were unconscious, shivering, and silently reciting prayers as if they were in a daze. "What's wrong?" Oaks asked. They were wondering why I was wearing a helmet, so I showed it to them. Haywood said innocently his helmet was the kind that only exposed a slit for his eyes, and he has now put it back on. "Look at this potential. Everyone is getting up and working." Morrison scolded. The next day, noon, Li Sight was originally going to find a channel to sell the gifts sent by the Earl, but after thinking about it, it was better to use it to increase loyalty. There are only about 30 sailors on the ship now, not too many. One person can finish a bottle of wood elf fruit wine and some high-end tobacco. I have my heart and soul for you guys, so I have to give up. Beautifully turned over your intestines. Morrison looked at the satisfied sailors on the deck and said that they could not believe that they could enjoy such a thing in their life, and they had mixed feelings. "Okay, the first mate and I, as well as Brother Shah, are going to Hongmin banquet. We have to go to the city in advance to prepare. I can rest assured that the ship will be left to you." Li Sight said to Oaks, "In society, I am Brother A.O. He is ruthless and doesn't talk much. He, in the Human Rights Card Supermodel card, can be called the 3 great powers of BlackSail. He is a data monster. Why don't you ask Swan to follow you? If anything happens, you can come back and report. Oaks thought that Swan could also come in handy. The people in the Thieves' Guild were all good at crooked things, such as stealing, lurking, unlocking, cheating, and assassinating. Those related to Zaya Sanwin are basically omnipotent. If you ask Swan to kill the enemy head-on, you may not be able to kill a few, but if you try to sneak in at night, you'll be better off. It goes without saying that arrangements have been made. Didn't you notice that there is no one else on the boat? Leaside said this. Could it be that you slipped in last night? Oaks reacted. Well, maybe all the bad things have been done. I spied on the Countess taking a bath, played some tricks, etc. Now I'm hiding in a cupboard or somewhere, waiting for the killing tonight. Leaside speculated that although there are many races in this other world and their aesthetics are different, it may be taboo for serious people. But when you encounter a ruthless character, you don't care at all. Just do it, and it's over. It's way more expensive than the Earth. It's okay to start killing, but there are auspicious words again today. Morrison was wrapped in a black cloak to hide the arsenal of weapons he carried. After all, he was going to someone else's house for dinner. Seeing how messed up you were, any business that could be negotiated would be impossible. Fun was speechless. Although he was from the Thieves' Guild, he was nowhere near as serious as the people on the ship. More than an hour later, Linden City. There are many weapon shops and consumable shops next to the Adventurers Guild. Anyway, nothing happened, and the three of them were wandering around. And by the way, they accompanied Morrison to get their weapons. Morrison inspects his new equipment. You want to become Iron Man? Leaside looked at Morrison's gauntlet. He was already fancy enough in battle, but now he also had a hand cannon. Morrison himself also knew a bit about mechanics. He drew a design and asked the owner of the weapons shop to type it out. Customizing equipment is nothing new. A powerful adventurer will make the equipment adapt to him. The destructive power of crossbow arrows is limited. Although the accuracy of this thing is not high, it only needs to be close to the face. Morrison's gauntlet is equipped with a simple projectile launching device. There are 5 small cannon ports on the edge of the curved iron block. Of course, due to technical limitations, it cannot fire continuously. It can only reload the projectiles every time it is fired. In a battle, it can only use once. However, quick reloading and silent bursts are also advantages. Morrison pulled the drawstring on the arm armor with his finger, and the crossbow launcher rotated and switched from the other side. Although it was not expected to penetrate the armor, the destructive power was considerable. A true master always has the heart of a disciple. Leaside sighed. Brother Shah is already so perverted, and he is still improving himself, which is really commendable. I heard from Morrison himself that he used to make a living by helping adventurers cheat in job title assessment tasks. In short, he was acting as a power trainer, and the rewards each time were extremely generous. Assessment tasks usually involve hunting down some powerful monsters. Many adventurers feel that they can't handle it, but they want to advance to silver or gold level to receive better tasks, so they hire a power leveler. Morrison is a babble. 6 months ago, Lee Sight and Morrison were on a robbery trail to rob a big noble's goods from a port. They were wandering around a small town and met a group of adventurers who were worried about this. Morrison thought about how to do it again. Anyway, the old business can be solved in less than an hour. Not only are there mission commissions, but also the 8 golden dragons that these adventurers have put together. It adds up to a lot of money, so why not do it? 1 hour to lead, 3 seconds to solve. It was a terrifying white giant ape nearly 10 meters tall, wandering in the mountains and forests. The local town residents were very frightened. All the townspeople raised their heads, and the lords raised their big heads. They collected 26 golden dragons and issued a mission to the guild. I hope someone will solve it. The strength of that giant ape can lift several tons of boulders and tear people apart with their hands. No gold-level adventure group can defeat it with multiple people. Morrison was alone and kicked the heels of his boots. 2 sharp knives popped out from the front of his boots, holding daggers in both hands. It's so fancy that it's hard to describe. If I had to use a metaphor, it's like a mountain climber climbing a vertical cliff using a mountaineering pick and then fast-forwarding 100 times. Using all 4 limbs together, It climbed up the stairs as if it was killing its original form and climbed up the stairs. It exploded into flowers of flesh and blood. The giant ape slapped Morrison with its big hand, but it only hit himself. He stepped on it in less than 2 seconds. On the head, the blade of the whip was twisted around the neck, and with a strong pull, the body was immediately dislocated, blood spurted out, and the man was killed on the spot. The group of adventurers were dumbfounded and tried to recruit Morrison to join them at any cost. But who is a serious person to be an adventurer? Sir Alex's big goods are still waiting to be robbed. It can only be said that people have joys and sorrows, and cows and horses. It's almost 7 o'clock in the evening. Lee Sight and his party had already headed towards the Earl's manor. Taking a taxi would be too eye-catching, so it was better not to leave any trace behind for the Earl. The so-called courtesy, "I also brought a small gift," does not mean that Sir Alex needs this little money, but he must have that intention. When going to someone else's house for dinner, he must also bring a bottle of wine. This is a custom. So Lee Sight spent 2 copper coins on a bottle of low-quality wine fermented with sugar-cane honey, also known as rum. No one on the ship drank this stuff. Linden City occupies a very large area, and it is not all flat land. There are noble manors at the foothills of the mountains along the inner city. The night is bright with few stars. There is far more than just a moon here. On a cloudless night, you can see an extremely magnificent scene, a composition of red, silver, azure, and blue-violet celestial bodies adorned with brilliant stars. In Morrison's words, the scenery was like being driven to hell. The road leading to the Earl's manor was made of square kiln bricks that fit together perfectly. Although the group came on their legs, the quality of the road meant that the carriage could pass without any bumps. After walking through the woods for a while, avoiding the eyes and ears, when they were approaching the manor, the 3 of them came to the road. From a distance, I saw the brightly lit, large manor of the Earl. Even if you stand far away from the main building in the Baroque style, you can still feel the complex carvings on the walls. The curved arch-rib bridges connect the surrounding ancillary buildings. The Roman column decorations look extremely noble. The blue tiles on the roof are painted and painted under the moonlight. The splicing pattern is beyond exquisite. There are several entrances to this manor. Although Lee Sight came here secretly, he still chose the front entrance, otherwise he would look like a thief. There is a double Gothic wrought iron fence at the main entrance, and there is already a young servant in a maid uniform waiting for her. Although she is not a beauty, she has good features and excellent manners. After staying in a wealthy family for a long time, she will naturally develop a sense of calmness. Aura, regardless of position. It must be Hey Fans Group who came at this point. 6 male waiters wearing black vests and white shirts open the iron door. Invite you 3. The dinner is still being prepared. I will take you 3 to the tea room to rest first. What else did the maid want to say? Fun frowned and pressed his monocle, thinking that he was being underestimated, but he still had a big job. Even if you don't come and pick him up in person, you still have to send a close associate, and again it has to be a housekeeper. Who are you fooling as a servant? Lee Sight knew Finn very well, and he didn't care about it. However, Finn had a very high self-esteem and had no choice but to become a pirate. His status was gone, but his face was still there, so he was a very troubled person. Brother Shah, please say a few words. Lee Sight is the host and guest, and it seems a bit low-level to be messy. Morrison sneered when he heard this and said without any nonsense, "Call your master out. We are a bunch of people with a high bounty on us. We can lose our lives at any time. If the master doesn't show up, we have been in exile for many years. We are afraid that it is a trap. Brothers, there could be a killing spree at any time." Lee Sight hissed, but there was no need to say it was so cruel. Morrison's face has too much life on his hands and carries an extremely terrifying aura that will make the hair on the hair stand on end. Even the manor's waiter, who had seen many big scenes, was frightened and his face was dull. "I'll go right away." The maid felt a little awkward walking and even fell flat on the way. There were black lines on Lee Sight's forehead, which frightened the little girl. Less than 2 minutes. A young man who was richly dressed, made of top-quality silk fabrics, and well-nourished and powerful, arrived here. He was the Earl's son. The title of the Principality of Pema can be passed down among the direct descendants of nobles of Earl and above. Even if they do not inherit the title, they are still honorary nobles by default and do not need to be awarded. They are the lowest baron and can receive official pay from the palace. Some are born as cows and horses, and some are born in Rome. The earl's son dismounted and walked over stiffly. Lysite was speechless. He was worthy of being a noble. Why would he need a means of transportation for such a small distance? Sorry, my father is dealing with important matters and has already ordered me to welcome the distinguished guests. I was negligent. The earl's son knew the abilities of these people. He was interested in them not because of the casino deal, but because of the Blue Bay port incident. He asked them to run the casino just to see if they were fake. Harm, I don't care about this. Lysite waved his hand. It's just that my two brothers are timid and are afraid of something happening. The earl's son smiled awkwardly. It was so awesome. He killed the lord and his family of Lanwan Port and distributed the money to the common people. The local admiral also made money. It was a win-win situation. Only the dead lord and his family were injured. Not only was he very courageous, but he also had a lot of brains. This is also something that my father is quite satisfied with. Here you go. I'll take you to the tea house to rest. It will be fine in a quarter of an hour. The chef of the village once participated in the food competition in Yalin. The earl's son hadn't finished speaking yet. Okay, don't say so much. Just take the tea with you as quickly as possible. My legs are very tired after being on the road for a long time. Morrison doesn't show any respect at all. You guys don't have to do this job. If you don't like it, I'll kill your whole family and leave. The nobles are all the same thing. This is not a manor with a big garden and a big fountain. You can afford to sell dates on the street, but selling 10 million dates is of no use. There is no guilt in killing these people. It is you who begged us to do something. The earl's son was confused. He had never been treated like this in his life. After all, you are a noble and I am a noble. Don't worry, we are drifting on the sea, so we may not be so polite. This friend of mine is actually kind-hearted, but he is just stupid and can't express it. Finn saw that the other party had given him face, and his brows widened. Thank you. Morrison was amused. The earl's son smiled awkwardly and led a group of people to the tea room. After a little while, in the tea room, the decoration in the homes of nobles can show the rich cultural heritage of the Western continent. The decoration in the homes of common people can only be said to be the place where one lives. The tea room alone is already larger than an ordinary-sized pub, with magnificent high-quality crystal wrought iron chandeliers. The whole room is in the traditional Bima style, which uses a lot of cool-toned crystal stones and pays attention to horizontal and vertical lines. Style: the walls are also covered with obsidian floor tiles, and the overall color combination is black, white, and gray. After winter, the fireplace has already lit up the fire. In order to pursue harmony and integrate the overall style, the Warcraft leather of the sofa has also been specially selected with the black fur of lightning mink. It is quite soft and comfortable to sit on. The servants in maid uniforms served Lysite, squeezing his legs and shoulders, which Lysite found helpful, but Fun and Morrison refused. Is this enough to kill you? Morrison took a sip of tea to see how the nobles lived and what life was like on a pirate ship. The earl's son accompanied the three of them, but he couldn't find a topic to talk about. He didn't dare to mention who he had robbed or killed, and asked politely about any interesting things he had encountered during the adventure. Interesting fact: Morrison thought for a while, remembering that he met an adventurer who molested the waitress in a tavern. I skinned a man in the tavern before, but I didn't kill him. I just broke off his hand. There's the adventure group came to my door and asked me for medical expenses. I said I would pay for it, but I didn't pay it, and they got angry, so I had to pay it all. Morrison made a gesture of wiping his neck. The earl's son broke out in a cold sweat. He shouldn't have asked. He really hoped it would be dinner time soon. He didn't want to be alone with these three killers. Lysite thought Swan was probably hiding somewhere right now. Maybe he was spying on him, damn it. Tightly flick the smooth fingers, the soft white flesh of the palms, and the warm breath lingering around the ears. Lee Sight is extremely comfortable, and this fingering technique is quite particular. Morrison is a restless person. After drinking tea, he paced back and forth in the room, turning into a stress monster. Lee Sight's good mood was gone. There would indeed be something important to do later. Oh, by the way, I brought a bottle of wine. Lee Sight almost forgot to give a gift and handed the rum he bought with 2 copper coins to the Count's son. The Earl's son took it and looked at it. He had never been exposed to this kind of wine. In his eyes, it was a rare novelty, possibly a valuable specialty of Tiongwa port. "Come here, why don't you give me a gift?" The Earl's son was polite and asked the servant to bring it to the table during the dinner later. "What kind of job is it? Your farm should have a lot of customers. It's time to use it. Why do you have to find us?" Lee Sight probed. "The village does have a lot of customers, and most of them are martial artists. They must be professionals who are familiar with the East China Sea to run it well." The Earl's son looked at the wall clock and saw that the time was almost up. Lee Sight raised his eyebrows, and he guessed very well. At this time, the door of the tea room was knocked slowly and crisply twice. After obtaining the consent of the Earl's son, the elegant middle-aged butler in a tuxedo entered the room with his hands behind his back. "Bow to the Earl's son. Master, the banquet has been prepared. The master, madam, and eldest lady have all taken their seats. If it is convenient, I will take a few distinguished guests to the main hall." The butler said respectfully. The Earl's son couldn't ask for more. "Isn't it time to turn your intestines again? It's a delicious meal today." Morrison made explosive remarks that completely ruined the atmosphere. Turning the intestines means that if you haven't eaten good food for a long time, a sudden change of greasy and meaty food can easily cause gastrointestinal discomfort and make you sick. "Please." The middle-aged butler smiled awkwardly, not expecting these pirates to know any etiquette. The tea room is in an annex building. To get to the main dining hall, you can go to the main building through the arch bridge built between the high floors of the building. Leaving the tea house, walking through the bright corridor to the covered bridge connecting the buildings, the sea breeze is cool. Standing on this covered bridge, dozens of meters above the ground, you can see a different scenery of the entire Linden City. You can almost take in all of it. Fundus. The 3 of them stopped on the covered bridge. The housekeeper and the Earl's son also waited wisely, knowing that this manor belonged to the top area of Linden City, and this kind of scenery was rare for them. "I didn't expect Linden City to have such a side." Lee Sight stood on the guardrail and marveled. He had been to Linden City many times in the past few years, but they were always in chaotic, muddy areas such as Miharang, slums, and markets. Only by standing at the highest point could he appreciate the east side, the beauty and grandeur of the densely packed buildings in Dagong. If you don't consider your position, it would be a pity to give these ice-free ports on the east coast to the current brainless king of Baima. If the emperor were to directly build them, it would not be a problem to make them look like beautiful illustrations. The land price in the city is still high. It can be doubled tenfold or even ninefold. If you are not wanted, you can open an office here, help adventurers with power training, and in turn become a bounty hunter killing pirates. Before boarding the ship, Morrison's bounty was the most common human life lawsuit in the Department of Justice. He did not provoke the government or big forces, so Oak said that the origin was clean and it was not a big deal if he was only killed by a bounty hunter. After all, the bandits of Bima Principality are now the system of the Justice Department has become paralyzed. Most of the officers and soldiers who specialize in apprehending fugitives are shady soldiers who only exist on paper with empty pay. Now the Justice Department is just a platform for the separatist forces to collect money and hire bounty hunters to take charge of local security. The palace's influence is slowly being eroded by the brain-dead king. When I was at Penn National Arcane Academy, Finn wasn't done yet. "Stop it, you can go." Lee Sight didn't want to listen to Fun's pretense at all. He went to Oxford in the Western continent every day. You have played, seen, and eaten, right? You guys are all mountain cannons, right? In addition, Lee Sight almost lost his strength. He was the only one holding his hand on the edge of the guardrail and could see the lower edge of the covered bridge. I don't know where Swan practiced his skills. If it weren't for Lee Sight's high psychological quality, he would have been almost shocked. Siwan was squatting under the covered bridge, hanging upside down with his amazing finger strength against gravity, with only one head exposed, and he also had one hand free to do something to Lee's sight. Even if I made a no-questions-asked gesture, I wouldn't be afraid of falling to my death from a height of dozens of meters. Lee's sight felt relieved and asked C1 to do the detection to see if there was any ambush. He should be careful to sail the 10,000-year ship. It seemed that he was indeed looking for a serious job. After the group crossed the covered bridge, Swan climbed onto the bridge nimbly and followed behind like no one else, making no sound at all while walking. 5 minutes later, main hall. In an unusually spacious room, 3 crystal lamps are suspended to provide dense lighting. Facing the wabi-sabi-style long table made of precious stone with imitation log texture, the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows almost hollow out the entire peripheral wall, and the sea breeze sways the gauze curtains. The most advanced interior designers must know how to use light and shadow. There are only 3 chandeliers in the house that focus on the dining table and the natural light of the night sky at the window. The exquisitely carved horse-chaleg seats made of the finest golden nanmu, and the snow fox fur cushions that are popular among the aristocrats. Welcome to my humble home. Please forgive me for the poor hospitality. The Count saw the 3 people coming in and spoke politely. The Earl sat at the head of the long table. He was wearing loose, casual clothes at home and did not dress up specially. His wife sat next to him. She was ridiculously young. On the right side sat the Earl's eldest daughter. The Earl's son also sat down at this time, and then he is a confidant with a resolute face. How can this be a humble place? My boat is 99 levels into the abyss. The 99 levels of the abyss here in the Western continent are equivalent to the 18 levels of hell in Lee Sight's hometown. Lee Sight and his party were sitting on the left side. They were not particular about the order. For convenience, Lee Sight was closest to the Earl. Nobles are very particular about where they eat. You can tell your identity from the position. Morrison's eyelids twitched. The Count looked like he was in his 50s, with white temples. His wife was younger than his daughter. She looked so good. Called a handsome man, with his snow-white neck exposed, wearing a low-cut evening dress, and hanging a crystal necklace on his chest. Who can withstand this? My little mother is literary. Everyone knows the name of the captain, and these 2 must be famous on the East Coast. The Count thought about the words, because pirates' nicknames are very ugly, and they often choose the worst words, and they also use the worst words. It has to be popular and easy to spread before it is widely known. Usually, it is extremely vulgar, so forget about the title, First Mate and Gunner. Because BlackSail and his gang are extremely rampant, they are on the blacklist of the governor of the East Coast. The bounty order clearly states which positions are good at and which weapons. It is equivalent to giving bounty hunters a free guide. What is their weakness? Speed. Go ahead and kill. It's ridiculous. A bunch of people just went out to sea to make a living. They all have a bad reputation. Lee Sight started to chat with the Earl, talking here and there, but they didn't get to the main topic. After some courtesy, the Count began to introduce his family members and a close confidant. Just when the cronies were introduced, I don't know what abilities you pirates have to attract the Earl's attention. The cronies suddenly started to get angry. These are all distinguished guests I invited, so don't mess around. The Count scolded him coldly. I'm afraid that these people are just a name only and will ruin the master's affairs. The reply from the confidant was sonorous and powerful. Lee Sight smiled and said nothing. This confidant wore iron armor when eating, with a big sword standing beside him. He must be the Earl's personal guard. He is also a master. At least he can be an honorary level adventurer. Everyone was having a good chat. But this henchman is so stupid that he can't have fun with it? Of course not. It must have been the Earl's instruction to inspect the goods at the last moment to see if they were up to the task. Acting is not necessary. Count, we don't beat around the bush. We are all open-minded people. We open the window and talk. It just so happens that we haven't served food yet. We can still practice and let you see it with your own eyes. I didn't get here by talking nonsense. I have to have the ability to look after my house. You, my friend, are no match for these 2 masters. Lee Sight spread his hands. General Fun and Brother Shah were both there. Whichever one he picked out, he was a tough guy among tough guys. What do you mean? The Count tried. You can fight. Lee Sight made a gesture of invitation to Morrison. Although he said enough, he still had some concerns. The place was narrow, and Fingaugawe's range damage could not be dealt. Since I'm a direct recruiter from Bosch, I should have some interview work. However, my skills are all killer moves. If I accidentally destroy this Lord Knight. Morrison stood up, unfazed. The sword has no eyes, and the pain of the flesh and skin is inevitable. It's easy to say. The knight's cronies didn't waste any words and stood up as well. In that case, I'll give you 2 moves. Morrison retreated behind the table into the open space. No, just come. The knight also retreated behind. His boots were positioned corresponding to his shoulders, his knees were bent and sunk, and his dual-wielding hybrid swords were sharp and made of magic stone, exuding a faint purple-green halo. Is it? Morrison lifted his cloak and revealed his arsenal of weapons, causing the knight to pause for a moment. But it was fleeting. 2 flying knives had already been fired, and the sound of breaking through the air was extremely violent. The knight's dynamic vision was extremely strong. It was just a flying knife. He immediately blocked it with his horizontal sword. The broad blade of the big sword blocked 2 flying knives at the same time in a straight line. But the power of the flying knife was so terrifying that it was unbelievable. Although the knight's posture was not broken, his plate armor boots scraped against the ground and was knocked back half a meter. Morrison sneered. First form an inherent understanding. 2 flying knives can block it, but what about 3? The speed was so fast that it turned into a phantom, and it was impossible to see the move at all. After the flying knife exploded, Morrison's whole body seemed to be attacked and killed by the ghost of the wind. The knight still blocked the 2 flying knives, and the tiger's mouth felt a little sore. Where did he get this strength like throwing cannonballs? There was also a flying knife that he didn't dare to catch, so he turned his head to dodge. The flying knife directly penetrated the wall, opening a big hole and sending up dust. Watch Morrison come running. The knight immediately threw away his sword, drew out his broadsword, and fought hand to hand. With the clanging sound of gold and iron, sparks splashed like a waterfall. Morrison's dagger was made of scrap metal, incomparable to the luxurious weapons piled up by the knight's golden dragon. It was already cracking at the disadvantage and would soon fall into pieces. It was always the equipment advantage. Morrison wore a light crocodile skin jacket, not even armor, while the knight was covered in steel armor. Morrison could have killed the knight at this time, and the advantages of the new equipment were revealed, but considering that he was in someone else's house, he had to give some face, so he had to let it go. He struck at the knight's neck with one hand, but was clamped tightly by the arm-covered hand, unable to move at all. Morrison was at an absolute disadvantage at this time. Unexpectedly, Morrison kicked his heel, and a sharp knife popped out from in front of his boot. To put it bluntly, there was less than 3 seconds after Morrison lifted his cloak. The strength, speed, and reaction ability among the masters were incredible. It was hard to imagine that it was an action that a human could accomplish. Morrison used the force of being clamped by the knight to lower his center of gravity, completely hanging his weight on the knight, and turned sideways in a weird arc for half a circle in the air. The tip of his toe directly hit the shoulder of the knight's right hand holding the sword. This terrifying kick directly broke the armor, and the sharp knife penetrated the flesh and gouged into the bone. The knight lost his right hand on the spot, and the broadsword fell with a clanking sound. He fell heavily to the ground with his armor on, and was stepped on by Morrison with a smooth movement. Morrison pulled out his boot-tipped knife and was bleeding profusely. The knight was immediately killed. The Count and his family were dumbfounded. They had never seen such a tricky and strange fighting method. It's embarrassing. Morrison wiped the blood on the sharp knife, kicked his heel and put it back, and added, "I know a little bit about the structure of most living things, especially humans. I just kicked him with a knife on my shoe. The tendon is detached, so it must be treated as soon as possible. Otherwise his hand may become useless." The sight took a breath. You really know how to show off. Fun's eyes flashed. Morrison had never used his full strength. He had many weapons, and they were all made from scraps. It was as if he was challenging his own limits. This person had to be on guard. With such skills, the Western continent, where can I go? But we've been fooling around together for more than a year. Are we really just living a life? If you are not as skilled as others, you will be defeated. The knight was quite cheerful and stood up, having to submit. Soon the doctor came and took the knight for treatment. After the episode has passed, Lee Sight and the Earl chatted for a while, talking about current affairs in a typical middle-aged manner, with no nutrition at all and no need for nutrition. So they just talked nonsense. At this time, the dishes began to be served on the long table. It was served by a tall hand spoon who had achieved top 24 results in a Yalin food competition. No matter in terms of material selection, cooking skills, presentation aesthetics, appearance, aroma, and taste, everything was impeccable. They're all big dishes. No matter whether they're sea, land, or air, the ingredients are more expensive. There's a large dish of large shrimps and various seafood delicacies. The light-colored sauce is crystal clear, and the meat is so fragrant and tender that it is shaking when it is served on the table. This kind of shrimp cannot be caught in this area on the East Coast. It is a famous product in the inland sea of the Western continent. Common people will never get a chance to get involved in it. Will you be sent to seafood hell after eating this? Morrison didn't wait for the Count to move his fork, picked a piece of shrimp meat with his hand and put it in his mouth, which turned his intestines again. This friend is very skilled. I don't know where he learned it. I'll let the dog suffer too. The Earl believed that he had countless readers, and there were many capable customers in the manor, and he had never seen anyone like Morrison. The Earl's son smiled awkwardly, wondering what kind of material he was. Lee Sight was speechless. Your son has the qualifications to be a great emperor, right? Well, learning alone won't do it. It depends on whether life is tough or not. Morrison replied casually. Seeing that Morrison was unwilling to say anything, he stopped asking. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. None of the Count's family was in the mood to eat. Morrison was the only one eating, and everyone else looked gloomy. Lee Sight knew that it was time to get to the point. I heard from your son that this person, who has a big job and needs to be familiar with the East China Sea, doesn't know what the situation is. The sooner we know, the better prepared we will be. Lee Sight went straight to the point. I want you to pick up 3 people and transport them to the Port of Heaven. Someone will be waiting for you there in a month. You hand those 3 people over to each other, and that's it. The Count said calmly. Lee Sight nodded, as expected. Who are these 3 people? This is what Lee Sight cares about most. The monsoon cold current on the East Coast was biting to the bone, and the hidden form penetrated the skin and could not help but feel a slight chill. In a daze, a few thick clouds blocked the celestial light, making it a bit dim. The Earl did not reply, but simply raised his hand and asked the butler who was waiting aside to hand Lee Sight a letter. This is not a time of war. Privateering licenses are issued for free. In times of peace, they are worth more than gold. The Earl also changed his previous politeness and showed a little bit of the coercion of the superior. Of course, Lee Sight understands this truth. There are no eternal enemies, only eternal golden dragons. When a war breaks out, the governor of the East Coast will have to serve tea to the big bosses of Tianguo Port. The strength of Tianguo Port is an emergency reserve, and it can also be regarded as the East Coast. An advantage for pirates. If BlackSail and his gang hadn't been able to solve every case, Lee Sight would have gone to the prime location of the inland sea to hang out. In times of peace, a privateering license is equivalent to an iron certificate. You can be tyrannical in the territorial waters of the Principality of Pema. On the high seas, hostile countries with 0 diplomatic relations can rob merchant ships at will. If something goes wrong, the governor will take care of it, and the principality will take care of it. Although the Bima court is now powerless, an emaciated camel is bigger than a horse, and it is far from being a victim of some geopolitics. A functional small country that serves as a strategic buffer can come to make plans. The brain-dead king cannot lift a knife, and the separatist nobles and palaces the powerful officials at home can still be promoted. The Principality of Bima has a blood transfusion from the East Coast. No matter how bad the overall economy is, it is not much worse. The people are poor and the master is rich. However, the major nobles in the interior also feel that a storm is coming, and they impose taxes and add all the points to the army. Up, you go to the 100,000-volt electric fish, and I go directly to the Thunder Emperor's Sutra. Rolled up, so there are too many people who are fleeing the famine. They are all insolvent sharecroppers. There are too many countries in the Western continent, big and small, but 90% of them are only in the wild area for players in the peak competition. The real lineup must be between the established, powerful countries that can be counted on 10 fingers and the most powerful emperor in the Western continent. The emperor's mood state. In short, privateer captains in peacetime are already worse than some small nobles in rubbish fiefdoms. Li Site opened the letter and read the content on it. It was written by Pema Xiao Chai Jin, a senior official in Chai's family. It probably meant that it didn't matter to him. It was just a matter of the Earl's comment. The reason is that it is handwritten, because there is a red official seal on the letter, the emblem of Chai de Guanren's family, a rather majestic falcon. Whether it is the Principality of Bima or anywhere in the Western continent, all carpenters engaged in engraving must register with the Department of Justice. In the information flow environment of the Western continent, there are two sentencing methods for privately engraving seals. If it is a private commercial seal, it's just a matter of being sent to prison and working as a coolie and carving an official seal privately. That's really bold. If the gallows is not accepted, the person coming from the Justice Department is no longer a Een soldier, but a serious official in the Yang world. Li Site didn't talk nonsense. It was useless to hold the letter by himself. He had to rely on the Earl to nod and hand the letter to the butler again. We already know the Count's sincerity, but we still need to know the origin of who he is transporting. How do I know if the person he is transporting is from some royal family? And if he is chasing the strongest group of masters in the Western continent? You will come to us. There must have been mistakes in the process, and the news was leaked. It is not a matter of taking a boat to travel to Tianguo port. Feng believed that the Count offered such generous terms to buy the lives of people like himself to work, and he must explain everything clearly. The Earl tapped the table with 2 fingers and replied, "First of all, they're not the royal family, so you can rest assured. Then, so far, there have been no mistakes. They must have crossed the giant wall by this time, settled in the Midwest, and taken official positions. I have a hurry up. It only takes half a month. I just want to be sure." Seeing how the Earl was talking about him, Feng was not satisfied with this answer. There was nothing wrong with it. Someone must be chasing in this general direction. It was just a matter of time before the pursuers discovered the problem. No matter how shady it was, there was no need to do this. If the situation is so frightening, it should be handed over in Linden City instead of going to that damn place in Paradise Port. Seeing that Feng was about to speak, Li Site stopped him. If you don't risk your life to be a pirate, then you are still called a pirate. This deal is very important to BlackSail. You can either continue to hang out in this poor place on the East Coast in the future, or you can gallop, looking down on the world from all over the world. If it's not the royal family, it must be a very important figure, some old cannon rob from the prison, or the illegitimate son of some big shot. I understand what the Count means. At least, the origins of the 2 guards must be revealed. Until the delivery is completed, I will not disturb these 3 men. There will be a separate room for a small stove, and I will never interfere. No problem, we will take it. You know that I am a cheerful person, and this is the bottom line. If we can't negotiate, I am known for my trustworthiness on the road, and I will definitely keep my mouth shut for the Earl. I will go home and return to the pirate den in the next few days." Li Site said calmly. "On board the ship, you are not just letting yourself be manipulated. You're just weighing the skills of the guards, which can also roughly anchor the scope of the protagonist's identity." The Count frowned. Li Site and his party knew that if the negotiation failed, they would kill the Count. They couldn't leave, just as they wanted like yesterday. Li Site decided to act cool and put 2 fingers to his mouth and whistled. It was BlackSail's internal code, and it was not complicated. If it lasted for more than 2 seconds, it meant there was no problem. A short whistle meant he would kill directly. Swan had been resting on the windowsill before, but when he got to the point, he had climbed up to the ceiling. Seeing Lee's sight put on that disguise, he adjusted the password. Swan and Archer's emotional intelligence were as different as clouds and mud. Knowing that he wanted to show some strength, he fell from the ceiling, like a ghost, and landed silently directly on the Earl and his young wife. Middle. The Earl's beautiful wife clutched her chest and screamed. The eldest daughter and the Earl's son on one side were also so frightened that they couldn't hold the tableware securely and even moved back a few steps with their chairs. The armors of the 10 trusted guards standing by in the corner of the room were clanking as they surrounded a group of 4 people. "Stop! Everyone stand back." The Count stopped the surrounding guards, but he was also a little panicked. If the Tiger Man were to kill him with a dagger, and he was less than 30 centimeters away from him, how could these guards help him? He knew that Lee's sight would not kill him, and he did not dare to kill him, which was a bluff. His city tower and the secret port where their ship docked were all his own, so it would not be easy to get out. I have long heard Admiral Linden City say that the most difficult thing to deal with in the East China Sea right now is not the big pirates. They all have big businesses and are no longer related to thugs. The most rampant groups of desperados now rely on force and ruthlessness. Among those who got mixed up, Hei Fan is one of them, and he truly deserves his reputation. The Earl sighed, not afraid that Swan would kill him, and he spoke openly, using the word thug and pirate. Good things don't go out, and bad things spread thousands of miles. My brothers are all good guys who steal from the rich and give to the poor. Those people are just demonized by word of mouth. Whether it succeeds or fails, the Earl has to give an accurate answer. Lee's sight lit a cigarette and started smoking. "So he's a count. Have a seat for this tiger friend, and open 2 bottles of the best wine in the house." The Earl calmly ordered the butler. Lee's sight was relieved. It was done, and he had someone as a hostage, so he was not afraid that the Earl would not pay the balance. The situation has completely de-escalated. When the Count and his family saw that the matter was settled, the gloom on their faces disappeared, and they moved the tableware with due etiquette. Morrison ate from beginning to end, not stopping his fork when he was tense. Although Lee's sight was nervous, he was a reliable person and never let his guard down at critical moments, knowing that nothing would happen. Swan also sat down. Not to mention anything else, the official members of the Thieves' Guild had enough money. They had eaten before, and they had limited interest in a table of big dishes. The atmosphere became relaxed, and the Earl also arranged for a musician to play the piano next to him. The decibel was suitable as background sound to soothe the mood and would not affect normal conversations. One of them is a high-ranking figure in the Holy Spirit Church's judgment office. The Count had not finished speaking. "Wait, is it from the Kingdom of Xi'an?" Lee's sight couldn't help but ask. The Church of the Holy Spirit is a religion widely distributed in the Western continent. It believes in the 13 Holy Spirits. The East Coast area generally believes in the wave and storm Holy Spirits among the 13 Holy Spirits. It is also the main belief in the gods in the coastal areas. Relatively speaking, the Church of the Holy Spirit is a very mild sect with relatively few demonic people. How is it compared to other religions in the Western continent that turn people into darkness, such as the Miracle of Pain, Holy Allah, and Silence of Silence? Lee's sight was a little afraid of those people. It was either a question of whether they would die or not, or they were evil and scary. Depending on the region, the teachings of large sects such as the Holy Spirit Church are also very different. Religions often have a strong social service nature. Even if they are the same religion, the teachings will change with the local political ecology, just like on Earth. A sect in China is divided into Catholicism, Puritanism, Protestantism, etc. It is the same principle. The fundamental Holy Spirit Church has extremely strong universal values, and the customs and behaviors and internal logic it advocates are very clever, allowing a civilization to develop in a virtuous cycle. But it is different in the Kingdom of Xi'an. It has become the political tool of the King of Xi'an. The demon hunters of the Holy Spirit Church over there are unable to communicate, cannot communicate, and are targeting you, so they have no good juice to eat. The classic story gives you 100 million and is chased by a snail, but you have no money and it is not a snail. The one who comes to kill you is the ultimate devil, and it may not necessarily kill you, but it requires some fancy rituals. So Archer, who was at odds with the Xeon court, was frightened when he heard that the demon hunter was coming. It's not from the kingdom of Xeon, it's from the territory of Aram, the Punisher Caruso. The Count called the servant and also lit a high-end cigarette and smoked it. The state religion of Aram is very powerful. It allows citizens freedom of belief and also allows other religious forces to open churches and preach. As long as you give money to rent land, it is easy to talk about it. The Emperor is a very powerful figure. He once threatened that eternity and the Dragon of Time is generous and tolerant of all gods. So when people say they are emperors, their courage is really terrifying. The Eternal Sect has jumped from the second echelon to the top religious force in the Western continent. Everyone is willing to believe in the most powerful one. Have you ever heard of this man? Lee Sight had never heard of it and asked the other 3 people. Fun and others all shook their heads. I've never heard of it. It's normal. Those in the Holy See don't like to be in the public eye. Earl explained. Lee Sight glanced at Morrison thoughtfully. The nickname the Punisher sounds so outrageous. I don't know if you can stand it. Morrison feasted like a normal person and didn't care who was the guard. The Punisher is a position. The Earl also spoke with profound meaning. As Fun was eating, he thought of some things in Aram. Although he didn't know the name of this person, he also had a little idea of the protagonist of the escort. Where's the other guy? Lee Sight asked. This person is famous. He is a heroic adventurer. He has not joined any adventure group. He is a lone wolf. You must have heard of Moon Swordsman Gloria. The Count said calmly. Lee Sight took a breath. A hero-level adventurer is only one step away from a palace-level person. He is a famous figure. Wait, Gloria? Lee Sight got hard and fisted. Although I have never seen him in person, he is rumored to be an adventurer with a lot of spare time, and he is a quite promising character. Woman, Finn said subconsciously. Is there anything wrong? The Earl asked. The names of the 2 guards were mentioned, and then it was time to finalize the details. The good wine that the Count had ordered from the manor had been opened and poured into the goblet in front of Fun. Without, Fun took a sip of his wine. It was taboo on a pirate ship to take a woman out to sea, but it was a good thing that this woman had the ability to protect herself. If she didn't have the ability to protect herself, the 100 or 200 people on the ship would have eaten a meal of hob meat, and it would have been a boring voyage. There will definitely be evil fire in the fire. If it is small, it will cause a commotion. Someone may sneak up on any corner of the ship and force them. If it is large, it will cause a private fight among the crew members, which may result in the death of someone. Since you are a moon swordsman, you will not cause trouble. If you are lustful, you are not afraid. 3 weeks is not too long to get to Tiangwa Port. There are also brothels at the stopping points on the way. If you're really worried, you can go and solve it. They're all high-end people. Lee Sight thought that the Punisher would only be stronger than Gloria, not weaker. After all, adventurers were hired, and genuine personal guards would definitely be more powerful. How did you handle it? Did they come directly to the secret port, or what? Finn asked for specifics. They will not stay in my manor. The meeting point is Lavender Town, southwest of Linden City. They will come to the lakeside villa 5 miles east of the town. It is very easy to recognize. It is a place I use for vacation. The real estate can be called luxurious. It is best to go there and wait 10 days later. After receiving the secret port, do not hesitate and go directly to the sea to Tiangwa Port. As for the docking person at Tiangwa Port, they will tell you. To be on the safe side, the Count explained it to the 4 people again. Finn memorized all the keywords Lavender Town, 5 miles east, Lakeside Resort House, 10 days later. Very good. Lee Sight knew that this was a life-and-death job, and it was far from as easy as the Count said. The final payment is a privateering license. It is indeed an irresistible condition, but the final payment is the final payment after all. From now on, our brothers will die at any time. The Earl smiled and naturally understood what Lee Sight meant. Pay the deposit in installments. Every day from now on, I will send someone to deliver 100 golden dragons to your ship. Until the 10th day, you will send someone to Lavender Town. This is today's share." The Earl clapped his hands, and the butler took out a small, exquisite box from the servant, opened it for Lee's sight to take a look at, then quietly closed it and placed it in front of Lee's sight. Even Swan, who had dealt with treasures the most, was amazed by the Count's handiwork. This was not a copper coin, nor a silver coin, but a gold dragon. A piece of gold dragon could provide a person with food, clothing, housing, and transportation for half a year. Fum was also interested. This was a new record, surpassing the most money BlackSail had ever made, which was more than 900 gold dragons. At that time, a whole boat of people spent more than half a year in Paradise Harbor and were almost useless. Morrison is still the breadwinner. "Earl, it's so refreshing. I'm speechless. It's a deal. I'll do it first as a courtesy." Lee Sight picked up the wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Even the eldest daughter of the Earl was a little heartbroken, because this is really the best wine in the winery, and it can be used as a collectible to increase its value and be auctioned for a high price. It is really a waste of natural resources. Everything has been negotiated, from the pickup location, precautions, and specific remuneration. There was no longer any doubt on either side. During the banquet, the waiter gave the Earl and his family the 2 copper gold rum that Lee Sight brought to drink. The expressions on the 4 people's faces were quite wonderful. This was the first time they had tasted such spicy and low-quality food. Lee Sight was not a person without discernment. He and his group of fugitives could not stay at the Earl's house. After dinner and dessert, it was time to leave. "This is the first time I meet this Count, and it may also be the last time." Lee Sight and his party took the Golden Dragon to leave. If there is a fate, they can cooperate in the future. After BlackSail and his gang left, the Earl's son stared at the long, empty table in shock. Treating guests to dinner here in the Western continent is the same as in Lee Sight's hometown. It doesn't matter whether you can finish the meal or not. The noodles must be filled up. It is normal for a big noble to treat guests to 20 or 30 dishes. Lee Sight insisted on not losing money and packed it up directly. The cattle and horses on the boat were standard civilians of the Principality of Bima who were only willing to eat meat during the New Year and the holidays. They couldn't give up after this meal. Is it really appropriate? 100 golden dragons a day. The Earl's son thought that his father was a little too generous. In addition to the 30 gold dragons given to them by the sheriff before, the 100 gold dragons yesterday, another 100 just now, and 1,000 gold dragons will be sent over next. For the common people, it's an astronomical amount that can't be used in several lifetimes. Even for the entire family, it is a huge expense, and a piece of thigh meat is cut out. No one who can reach their level is not smart. They understand in their hearts that this is a life-or-death mission. This is not money for them to work, but money to buy their lives. The Count walked to the window. There was still half of the low-quality rum in the glass. He tasted the spicy taste carefully. The so-called pirates are such wonderful creatures. The soil and water support the people, and the sea is completely helpless. The zone has also created crazy people who dance on a tightrope that cannot be seen from the perspective of the land environment. A pirate's life? Is it worth this money? The Earl's son also understood that this matter was of great importance, but the privateering license was not a matter of friendship. He had already prepared gifts in advance, and the total of everything was really not worth it. You still have a lot to learn. You should know that the secret port we have opened has been losing money. The berthing fees for smuggling ships and pirates are only a drop of money, and the tariffs that can be avoided are also quite limited. It is not as good as my efforts to manage relationships, and the money I sent to the Admiral is a lot. Do you understand why I keep driving it? Asked the Count to his son. He guessed for a while, because the other nobles in Linden City also have secret ports. If we don't open them, it will only make them bigger and bigger. Well, it's pretty smart, but that's just one point. Just like a big hotel in the inner city, if they grow all their own ingredients and raise them in captivity, they will save a considerable amount of money. But only fools would do that. You have to understand, when a business becomes big, there will be big difficulties. Some things must be left to others to handle. Some money must be earned by outsiders, and some unjust money must be spent. What is not spent on the steel blade is spent on the steel blade. The steel blade is on. The Earl said no more. He was young and didn't understand what it meant. Even if the gentleman arrived in Lavender Town safely without any pursuers, he could never send him out on his own ship. He had to completely remove himself. If it doesn't matter at all, the whole family's lives will be at risk. Besides, it's impossible without pursuers, and BlackSail and the others must understand that. The Earl's son was confused. Should he spend it on the steel blade or not? Do you have to buy a probability or something? After all, what the Count said most often is that the world is a completely chaotic gambling game, and all people can do is to continuously improve their probability of success in the game and the trial and error cost accumulated by the chips. The latter is sometimes far more important than the former. More than an hour later. Secret Harbor. The meal on the ship tonight was very bad. It was cooked by the more chef Woolman, and the complicated cooking process was also very particular. First, boil a large pot of water, then pour the uncut vegetable leaves into it. Sprinkle some seasonings, and finally junk ingredients often require only the simplest cooking methods. The process took Master Woolman 2 minutes. Since they had a rather luxurious time at noon, they were suddenly brought back to reality. The sailors on the ship looked at the boiled vegetables in the bowl in confusion. You were raised by force, and you're still picky about food, right? Woolman is not feeling well, and Archer has collapsed in a mud again. He drank too much fruit wine brewed by the Wood Elf and is still a little weak. He is now lying in the ship's hospital with the infusion to sober up. How is Archer? Seeing Micah come out, Woolman asked, "It's best to die so that we can recruit a chef on board." Archer is a bit like the kind of roommate with cerebral palsy he met in school. Daily necessities such as soap, rolls, and paper towels. I don't buy it myself. I only use other people's. I can't say how bad it is. It's just disgusting. Plus, I'm a drunkard. I love to show off and don't know what the occasion is. I hate people and hate dogs. The stack of talismans is almost full. Fortunately, I don't know how his liver grew. Micah used a special diuretic to check Archer's liver function. The indicators turn out to be quite normal. He was born to be a drunkard. At this time, Lee's sight and his party came back. Fuck it. It's done. Rin was yelling because no one came to kill Lee's sight and the others. They were all jumping up and down, knowing that the matter was settled. The big job was about to start. Why are you coming back with something? Siadi took a closer look and found that they were carrying drawers for packing meals. Isn't this brought back for everyone to have a try? Lee Sight and his team put down the drawer and called all the sailors to gather over. Although it was already cold, it was still enough to eat. After opening the drawer, the people on this boat had never seen such aniseed ingredients before, and their eyes almost popped out. A few people volunteered to make some mashed potatoes to go with the meal. There seemed to be more people. Lee Sight looked at the people on the first deck. Because the big bunk at the bottom of the ship was not very ventilated, he liked to stay on the deck before going out to sea. We took in 8 people today. They were part of a group. They were bandits from the north. Their home den was raided by the local Viscount. Only 8 of them survived. They have experience of escaping from death, so they should be reliable in killing them. Oak said to Lee Sight and briefly tested the skills of these people. They are the most capable among the small characters. There is no problem in being a silver-level adventurer. Captain, I heard there is a big job coming next. Whatever you want to do, you can do whatever you want. The sudden appearance of a tattooed man with a skull on his bald head confused Lee Sight. Lee Sight was quite impressed by this bald man with tattoos. He was very energetic. It's still early. Don't be in a hurry. You guys have been going to Linden City to load the goods in the past 2 days. You should be familiar with the process. Starting tomorrow, keep an eye on the goods on the order that have not yet been shipped. They must be made up within 10 days and all shipped. Once on the ship, we will go to sea within half a month. This is not a joke. It is a big deal. If there is any lack of supplies during the voyage, people will die. If you can do it well, you will be promoted. Just like the Navy, the rank of private is 8. 1 month of silver coins, 10 silver coins for a skilled first-class soldier, 13 silver coins for a first-class soldier, 20 silver coins for a captain with 10 sailors. You should be able to be a captain at your size. Lee Sight made a judgment. Next, the core members will have to deal with the big job. No matter how many of these small characters there are, they can't hold up to Brother Shah. He leaves the chores of loading goods to this tattooed guy. This is a very positive comparison. Look at it. I came out and wanted to work as an official. The tattooed man immediately laughed. If it doesn't work out, please behead me. So he said. Lisite was in awe. Fuck this young man. Then I'll leave it to you. The ship doesn't just have dead wages. Like every pirate ship, there are dividends. That's the Golden Dragon. You know what I mean? Lisite patted the tattooed man on the shoulder. Next, we have to compete with the backbone, the navigation room, chess and card activity center for middle-aged and middle-aged people. Everyone is here except Archer. There are about 40 people on the ship now, and there are more than 20 regular troops with high combat effectiveness on Claude's side. They were all trained at the Yalan Military Academy. There are about 60 people. The ideal situation is 150 to 200 people. Much worse. Lisite urged the recruitment matter. Anyway, we must recruit enough people within 10 days. The Fermat King's Revenge is the largest among the medium-sized clippers. It has almost crossed the threshold of a large ship. It requires a lot more people than a standard clipper ship with 80 to 100 people. Claude, Alan Knight, the 20-something group is here, so you don't have to worry about the others who were in the same group before. You can find an intermediary to recruit people at will, so that they can check and balance each other on the ship. Oakes advocated this. He was originally opposed to recruiting a group of people on board the ship, but after he opened his mouth, there was no need to mention it again. So today I saw that the 8 people were okay, so I accepted it. That's right, these don't matter anymore. With us here, no matter how big the wave is, it can be calmed. The most important thing is the Count's business. Finn is already informed that 1,000 gold dragons will be sent. There was a strong murderous intention in the house, and I knew I was going to risk my life to survive. This was not stolen goods. It was distributed to various middlemen to earn the difference. It was a net profit, a real 1,000 gold dragons. If I can have a fight with Gloria, I'll be dead even if I die, and I'll be cool even if I'm a ghost. If I die with a big shot, my life, Micah, will be worth it. Micah said extremely unambitiously. The person hasn't arrived yet, and I haven't even seen what he looks like. It's just what the adventurer blew up, and it's already about to happen. How can I still get it when the person arrives? Saudi really doesn't know how Micah will show his courtesy if the Moon Swordsman gets on the ship. He's a heroic adventurer, and there's no man he can't pick. It's only you who fall in love with him. I'm the captain, so I should be the one to do it. Lisite said solemnly. I'm sorry, this is the only thing I can't compromise on. The crew vote should be opened. I'll vote for myself. Micah's tone was cold, and he spoke matter-of-factly, without any intention of joking. Haha, voting is not used to decide such stupid things. Do you think anyone cares about you? Lisite sneered and didn't take it seriously. I'm voting for myself. Morrison's tactics were blackface, and he made an explosive statement. I also vote for myself. Ren's tactical blackface said seriously. Lisite people are stupid. Are you serious? Haha, have you ever played with me? Before going to sea, I was the captain, but I had 2 votes. Everyone voted for themselves except Finn and Oakes, who abstained. Lisite is stupid. Why does Woolman still have such thoughts? You're not allowed to torture people to death. Besides, what the hell are you getting involved with? Lisite saw that someone like Haywood dared to surrender to him. You're really bold. I'm the only one in the entire Western continent who dares to accept you. Otherwise, those in the Holy See would have used it to carry out evil sacrifices, and they would dare to rebel. Just give it a try, Haywood said calmly. Siadi was the only one left who hadn't voted yet. I vote for Micah, so that the captain and the ship's doctor are evenly matched 2 to 2. Follow the rules and keep the result. Siadi sneered twice and added, I can only say that everyone depends on their ability. The whole place was in an uproar. Siadi's appearance, which could seduce the emperor's daughter and cause BlackSail to conquer the western continent, was completely cheating. Finn stretched out his hand to stop and said, Okay, now that the overall strategic form of the fight with Gloria has been decided, as well as the content of the competition, I now have some ideas about the main characters to be escorted. You can tell who it is just by looking at two guards. Oaks is more concerned about the person Caruso, the Punisher. It doesn't matter if the lunar swordsman is hired. The Church of the Holy Spirit is a widely distributed religious force. The base is quite scary. It is not a small sect that can anchor the general scope. A little clue. Nor. I don't know who it is specifically, but it must be someone who can pose a threat to the Emperor. Everyone knows that the old King Bhima died in a city on the East Coast. I want to inquire about it. The nobles who were there at the time to rescue failed. The Earl who made the deal with us is one of them. Finn expressed his judgment. So, the reason why the Earl helps people go to sea is to restore the kingdom. Ren was non-committal. These nobles were very cunning. They opened secret ports, engaged in smuggling, and evaded customs duties. They only sold hallucinogens. How could they have such noble sentiments? How can I see it? Lee Sight asked. The lunar swordsman looks like she is employed, but in fact she is not. Her hometown is Catania on the edge of the narrow sea. She was directly slaughtered by the Emperor more than 10 years ago. Such a small country has no qualifications to become a functional country. No, just building a post station and becoming the official road of Aram. Finn has an excellent memory. The Adventurers Guild's newspaper is full of gossips and scandals about famous adventurers. He sees it every now and then, and it's hard to forget. The Emperor allows other religious forces to enter Syria, and the most influential one is the Church of the Holy Spirit. The Emperor seems to respect the state religion of Syria. It is inclusive of all gods, but in fact it is not the case. He wants to weaken the influence of the state religion of Syria. Yes, it was just a mess, and it had the opposite effect. So, the situation in Syria is very complicated now. The Church of the Holy Spirit, the state church of Syria, the Emperor, everyone is 1 to 2. Since this person will be escorted by the Holy See, he is satisfied in order to pose a threat to the Emperor. I can only say that it does not necessarily have to be status satisfaction. It can also be that there is some powerful power in the body. Maybe it is really an apostle of the Holy Spirit or something like that. Funru added, Fuck, you are worthy of General Fun. He can plan between cabins and win a battle thousands of miles away. Rin thought it made sense when he heard it. So what you're saying is that the person who will come to Lavender Town will probably be Yalin's official. Lee Sight finally understood the core argument of Fun's remarks. Are you from Aram? I'll go to Lavender Town to pick you up. Woolman volunteered for the job because he felt uncomfortable without killing Arameans for a day. No, you're too big. The purpose is not to kill people, but to transport people out. The other party is also from Aram. Claude is a man of considerable strength and has the ability to become a core member. Since the other party is also from Aram, he should be handed over to Claude, which can be regarded as a complete break and a break, and he should be paid to get on the ship with a surrender certificate. Lee Sight said this, so the 10 golden dragons he spent were considered useful, and the group of people were still waiting for him at the Menglan Hotel. We can let Claude go up first to see the situation, but we still need 2 people. Gloria and Caruso know that they are looking for pirates to go to sea, and they have our wanted poster portraits. When they find that we are not there, they will something went wrong. Finn judged. Anyway, there are still 10 days left, so we can discuss it slowly. There will definitely be other changes after such a long time, and we must adapt accordingly. Oaks thought that since he was a big shot, there must be trouble in Linden City these days. We are birds in a cage and fish in a net. If this deal is completed, the birds will fly into the sky, and the fish will fall into the sea, and they will no longer be fettered. Lee Sight began to reread the classics. A week later, Secret Harbor is extremely empty. All smuggling ships, pirate ships, have gone to sea. Only the Firmikin's Revenge and a few semi-scrapped empty ships left behind so as not to attract attention were left. The eerie giant cave on the sea cliff, the sparkling water with rolling black waves, and the cold artificial traces on the wall reflect the waves. The secret port that was originally established privately and did not exist on paper has now become a wild port, an unmanaged anchorage. The Earl has completely withdrawn from this matter. According to the Ministry of Maritime Affairs of the East Coast, the ship is now charged with the dual crimes of illegal entry and illegal parking. The Navy has the power to kill first and ask questions later. The East Coast monsoon is very damp and cold. The deck of the BlackSail was densely packed with desperados from all over the world, with noisy and vulgar conversations and surly and cold-blooded faces. Now that the gap has been opened, it is possible to incorporate the previously organized gangs. Finding people from an intelligence dealer was very fast, and so far the expected number of people has been met, 160 people. Including Claude's side, there are more than 180 people in total. All races on the deck were carrying scimitars and axes, and their leather armors were full of fire. The Isu people from the southern continent, the orcs who fled in the north, and the tigermen and leopardmen from the Esnir province under the rule of the Empire accounted for almost one person. Less than half, as well as the pirate remnants compiled from everywhere that had been confiscated by the Navy. Oakes, the second mate, Wren, the rigging master, and Woolman, the quartermaster, all stood out even among such a group of people. 3 men in leather armor and hoods were tied to the mast with hemp ropes. They were all spies from the Thieves' Guild. They had already discovered the connection between BlackSail's first mate and the traitor Swan. When Finn was serving on the Magic Energy Industry Committee, he made a deal with the Thieves' Guild to assassinate other committee members, and the thief responsible for this deal was naturally Swan. Swan fled to the East Coast. Now that he has eliminated other people with connections, he can only go to Fun for the remaining ones. For thieves got into the boat last night, touched the magic thread arranged by Fun, and were caught. An extremely skilled thief escaped, and BlackSail was completely targeted by the Thieves' Guild, and they will never stop fighting from then on. One of our comrades has gone back to report the news. Diaz will not let you go. If you hand over Swan and the things, you could get away with it. If you form a quarrel with the Thieves' Guild, it will be useless to hide anywhere. The leader of the thieves said coldly, with a look of victory. Although he was tied with hemp rope, no one on the Western continent was not afraid of Diaz. There's a saying that the Emperor said that during the day in the country of Alan, at night, it was Diaz who had the final say. Lee Sight and his group were silent for a moment, which passed by briefly. Ren Woolman and the others couldn't hold it any longer, and immediately began to laugh wildly, with their bloody mouths wide open in a horrifying way. You haven't been around in the East Coast, have you? Do you think any of my people are scared? I made all my brothers laugh. Lee Sight grabbed the thief's hair and whispered in his ear coldly, "Pathetic little characters. You don't even know what Swan really stole." Lee Sight let go of the hand holding his hair. If you get on a thief ship, you are a thief. If you're a thief of BlackSail, if you're killed, tied up, or blocked on the road, you will lose my face. How can we still mess around in this area in the future? Lee Sight put out the cigarette, but an exchange student studying abroad at an Ivy League university, majoring in applied optics, but his career direction is as a pirate leader. Boom! Lee Sight held the frost cuckoo behind his back and cried out blood. The gouge penetrated directly into the skull, and a few drops of blood spattered on his face. He didn't even blink, staring at the thief's eyes until his eyes slowly lost focus and became completely dim. The other 2 tied thieves couldn't sit still. Swan was a happy man, and he cut his throat quickly with 2 knives. The 2 thieves could not scream, but blood bubbled from the throat incision. You guys throw people into the sea and turn the intestines of the fish here. Lee Sight summoned a few rogue sailors. The group loosened the hemp rope and dumped the man directly into the sea. Come here. Lee Sight held up his hand and asked the tattooed man to take out all the wood elf fruit wine and high-grade tobacco from the warehouse, as well as all the gift from the Earl, and distribute them all to the brothers, leaving nothing behind. The tattooed man has indeed lived up to his high expectations. Now all the supplies on the ship are ready, exactly as specified in the order. The people brought here are all pirate remnants with experience at sea. Coordination with sail control and sailor scheduling are not problems. They can be used at any time. Go to sea. These remaining high-end items were originally intended to be taken out and enjoyed the day before the war, but they could no longer wait until then. It's not the 10th day yet. Now, there is a problem. The Count's 1,000 gold dragons have all been delivered, and the next 3 days' share has been given to him. A big job indeed. It was far trickier and more complicated than Lee Sight's worst expectations. There are people on the ship who are responsible for going to the city every day to buy newspapers and inquire about news. Yesterday, a group of gendarmes came from Aram. The so-called gendarmes are soldiers who manage soldiers. They came to the port of Linden City with the handwriting of the top commander of the Aram. The current situation of the Principality of Bima is that it is a subsidiary country of the Aram Empire, which is equivalent to a vassal state. Although the treaty does not allow Aram to station troops, it cannot control the military police. In name, this is a special organization to maintain the authority of the empire and not part of the official military. The entire port was searched and even ordered to be placed under a total embargo for a week, and all ships were prohibited from sailing. The position of the Admiral of Linden City was not achieved through accumulation of connections. Now all the nobles in the country's separatist regimes have deployed their troops to make a strong case for their interests. Isn't a total embargo just a pipe dream? Thousands of ships come in and out of the official port of Linden City. The trade taxes brought by the terrifying throughput are transfusing blood to the entire principality. What's the point of being cut off for a week? There is no need to ask the governor of the East Coast for instructions. Once it stops, his head will be lost, so he refuses without thinking. The two groups are still arguing. Lee Sight knew that an embargo was impossible, but a comprehensive search would definitely not be possible. Before the person to be picked up had arrived, Alan's hand had already been stretched out. It was 10,000 times more serious than the Earl said, and it was flawless. Even if those military policemen were Arameans and were not familiar with the local area, they could find a nearby secret port with a little money and a little inquiry. It would only be a matter of time before BlackSail was found. But there is no problem now. As long as the black account they are looking for is not on the ship and has nothing to do with BlackSail, the Arons will not dare to overstep their way and kill pirates that others are responsible for exterminating on other people's territory. Isn't that when they are full and have nothing to do? As long as Corroso Gloria doesn't come, BlackSail will be fine. Nautical Interior. All 11 key members gathered together, and the atmosphere was quite solemn. Lee Sight has already formulated a strategy. It's easy to pick people up, but it's hard to send people out to sea. The most difficult thing is that the road from Secret Harbor to Lavender Town must be clear by then. Master Yalin is already patrolling around Linden City, and there is a high probability that he will start killing. We must ensure that we kill all the pursuers on this road. Wallman, Micah, and Haywood, you three are just sitting on the ship. If any outsider dares to come to the secret port, kill first and ask questions later. Lee Sight judged this way. You decide. Woolman knew that he was not suitable for the job of a receptionist because he was too conspicuous. Micah and Haywood also nodded. Micah's combat power is not high compared to the others. His skills lie in other places, while Haywood is a standard toolman. Run. You can run better than a horse. You and Archer will take 10 people to stay outside Linden City. It is more than an hour's journey from Linden City to Secret Harbor. Report any trouble at any time. On the day of pickup, the little guy kill them directly and drag the big fish as long as you can. Lee Sight ordered. Big job. Start. Warren wanted to say, Lee Sight quickly stopped. Oakes and Morrison are the main force, bringing all the crew members who can kill to ensure smooth flow of the road. Fun has secret skills, can transform into spirits, and provides 3-line support. I brought the most agile Swan and Siadi. Go to Lavender Town. To pick someone up, you don't have to wait for the agreed date. You have to go now. The plan can't keep up with the changes. Lee Site finished speaking. Everyone agreed. Everything has been finalized. As for the people of the Thieves Guild, although there will be endless troubles, they will go to sea in the next few days. They will not be able to reach the Heavenly Kingdom Harbor and build the world-famous pirate den. We will talk about the future later. Captain's Interior. Before leaving the army, Lee Sight still had things to do. He lit 2 candles, but 1,200 golden dragons were not enough. Among the 10 backbones, they were all ambitious people who would be willing to hang out in Paradise Harbor on the East Coast. It's been several years, and it's time to transform. If I don't accept this order, I won't be able to convince the public. Besides, I also have to accept this order. Second Master, even though I'm in a different world, I don't know if you can protect me, so I won't talk nonsense. If I survive and become prosperous, I can find all the alumni in this poor place. In this way, when I return to my hometown on Earth, I will definitely go to Guandi Temple to offer incense. 2 candles, 3 sticks of incense. But there is no such thing as incense here on the East Coast. Li Site took 3 cigarettes sent by the Earl and let Emperor Guan Sheng taste the foreign product from the Kangwu Mountains. Everything is ready. It's time to set off. On the trestle, there is a trace of magic power that I have planted in this box. As long as you open it, it will turn into a raven and fly back. I will know that you have received someone, and the strategic deployment will begin, and we will tear a way out. Fin carefully handed a palm-sized, wax-sealed wooden box to Li Site. I'll wipe it. Show it to me like this. Xiadi reached for it. You are mean, Swan. Keep an eye on him and don't let him touch the box. Fin warned. Swan nodded and said, just in case, if something goes wrong while picking up someone and we are blocked, it's unreliable to just use this. Fin objected. The Moon Swordsman and the Heavenly Punisher are not vegetarians. As long as the Yala military police are still searching, they will definitely arrive. They must be hidden at the moment. Moreover, Si Wanxin has just arrived and has not seen it. Li Site takes action because most of the time he is not needed. If he were a minor character, I would be the captain of BlackSail. To be honest, I am also writing the logbook, so he can just take charge of it. Li Site had black lines on his forehead and said, You don't want to say this in front of me, my Qilin arm is going to attack. Li Site pretended to be in pain and was about to run away. Real or fake? Xiadi took 2 steps back, fearing that Li Site would run into a rage. Fin smiled and said nothing. Li Site boasted that he once chopped a unicorn in Lingyun Cave and the blood spattered on his hand, so he got the unicorn arm. The Western continent didn't even know what a unicorn was, maybe about its equal to a deer plus a dragon. In fact, this is not the case. Fin saw this kind of thing in the library of Pedon National Arcane Academy. It was a cursed weapon called the Sword of King's Landing. 700 years ago, there was a country called the Kingdom of Glory, which has long since been destroyed. Its king was a woman, one of the few female emperors in history. At that time, her status could be said to be the first sister in the Western continent. The so-called King's Landing Sword is not a weapon used by the Empress, but she was afraid of the rebellion of the 33 glowing knights who had secured territory for her. So she asked the strongest warlock in the world to forge 33 cursed swords, called the King's Landing, were given to them respectively to show their kindness and power, and let the cursed sword take away their souls. The book said that the moment the Junlin sword is held, it will disappear directly into the body, and the unparalleled curse will destroy the soul in an instant. Then the Empress committed suicide. 32 people were indeed killed, but the soul of one of them did not belong to this world. The cursed sword lost its effectiveness, and instead carried the resentment of the other deceased knights. In the end, the knight used the King's Landing sword to kill the Empress and cut off the kingdom. The thing in Li Site's left hand was the Junlin sword. In fact, Fin had roughly guessed Li Site's origin, but he never made it clear. It's really about to happen. Qilin arm, cloud dispelling palm, and a peerless sword. First mate, you have to be careful. After you die, I will let Brother Shah be the first mate. Li Site covered his arms and spoke plausibly. All the jokes have serious elements, and Fin also tastes them, but he doesn't care. The rules have been set, and anyone who wants to get off the ship will be killed by others. There is no use talking about it now. This is not the time to talk nonsense. Fin has long been fed up with Li Site's cerebral palsy remarks. Ren was a very serious person when he first came here, but what has he become now, starting this, and that every day, Get to Sun will take some time for E-Town, and Claude and the others cannot ride horses, otherwise they will alert the enemy. When they receive someone, no matter whether there is anyone chasing them, open the box immediately, and all deployments will start to operate. I wish you good luck. No sense of humor at all. Let's go. Li Site took Shadiswan and the 2 of them away. About 3/4 of an hour later, The distance to Lavender Town cannot be reached by walking alone. Lee Sight and C1 directly bought 2 good horses at the inn on Guandao. Each horse costs 180 silver coins, which is almost a golden dragon. But now they are not saving money. When it comes to money, Xiadi will then walk to Lavender Town with Claude and his group. There are too many people in their group, and they all ride too arrogantly. Linden City is a large trading city, and the surrounding roads are all stone roads, so you can travel smoothly even on rainy days. It takes an hour to get to Lavender Town in the southwest. When Claude and his group arrived in Lavender Town, they bought horses locally, and after picking up the people, they all rode back to Secret Harbor. The BlackSail group in Lavender Town has already done an investigation. This is not a poor town. A special kind of red lavender is planted in large quantities, and then the essential oil is distilled and mixed with other auxiliary materials to make high-end perfumes and sell them to rich people in Aram who sell luxury goods, make the most money. The local area needs horse-drawn carriages to transport goods, and it is impossible to have horses. An hour later, Lee Sight and Swan trekked along the way and arrived at Lavender Town. There are basically no ups and downs on the Great Plains. All you can see are red and purple lavenders, which are almost half a person tall. The sight is refreshing and the fragrance is tangy. The town in the center also has purple and red brick roofs and has about 600 to 700 households. It is very different from the barren towns in the interior. Because there are so many giant celestial bodies in the sky of this world, they can be seen even in daylight, making it very easy to identify their orientation. Several people have already visited the site before. Now that we are familiar with the road, we head straight to the mountains and forests to the east. There's a lakeside villa 5 miles away. All we could do next is wait. Wait until Claude's group arrives first, and let the experienced regular troops serve as scouts to search for lookouts within a few miles of the surrounding area in order to respond. At last, when Caruso and Gloria arrive, and of course the most important mysterious figure, they will rush straight to the secret port and sail out to sea smoothly. If only it were that simple. Lee Sight thought so. Pick-up location. The Earl's vacation property is extremely luxurious. In the green forest at the foot of the mountain, there are exquisite walls with beautiful seams, Gothic spire iron gates, garden fountains that were recently taken care of, and a 3-story lake view house designed by a brilliant architect. The water in the lake is so clear that you can clearly see the white sand and stones and aquatic plants at the bottom of the lake, and there are also freshwater fish that you can fish for. Lee Sight and C1 tied up their horses and tied them to the trees in the forest. It was impossible to say that the wind was calm and the clouds were calm. It would not be long before this area became a battlefield. Just wait for Xiadi to come. We can only have picnics these days. Lee Sight didn't know when those people would come, so he must arrive as early as possible. He also prepared several days of dried meat. Swan talked even less than Oaks. The two of them searched the house and relaxed a little when they found no one there, but now they were walking on a tightrope, so being on guard was not an exaggeration. So I was not in the mood to rest in the villa, and was still restless outside by the lake. Lee Sight hoped that Xiadi would come soon. He really had nothing to say to this tiger man. He was too boring. He probably stayed in the Thieves' Guild for too long and turned into a gloomy person. So your hometown is also in Esnir province? Lee Sight forced himself to find a topic. When that place was Old Aram, it was a province of Aram. It could be said that it was an old Aramite. Woolman's hometown is in the Great Wetland. Oaks is in the Mirror Sea, which is thousands of miles away, and Ren's hometown is on a plateau. The altitude is quite ridiculous. Yes, after all, the roots of our tribe are there. Swan replied calmly. Lee Sight put his tongue against his cheek, but you could talk about the beautiful scenery and beauties of Esner, etc. It would be boring to talk about such a heavy topic. Lee Sight squatted down and smoked a cigarette like a gangster. It was so hard, and he really wanted to have a fight with Gloria. Although Lee Sight's words about the Thieves' Guild are true, this organization is quite muddy and smells too bad, and there is no telling which day it will be smeared to death. Have you met Diaz in person? Lee Sight asked, This person is indeed of a certain level, his influence can spread to many countries, and it is not yet the trend of division. He has methods for controlling people's hearts.